Hey guys. This is part 2 of What If Naruto Was a Dragon Rider. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 9, Plans in Motion. In a small town to the north of Konoha, all was quiet and peaceful. Except in one small convenience store. There were several shouts, then a rather loud scream, followed by a man holding his crotch stumbling out. He was pelted by several objects, as an enraged female voice followed him. "Next time, I won't just fucking punch your tiny ass limp dick, you ass raping fucker." The voice belonged to a rather irate-looking redhead, who growled, as she wheeled the wheelchair she was sitting in back behind the counter of the store, and then slammed her head into the counter. "I fucking hate my life. You should be more considerate of the customers, Tayuya," came an old voice. Tayuya looked up, to see an old lady coming over. "He wanted to take me to the back, and fuck my brains out. He actually believed that I would do it, sup because I was a fucking crippled. What was I supposed to do, Kango Hiei-san, hike up my skirt and say jump on in?" She muttered, as she sat back up. The old lady chuckled. "Still as fiery as the day I found you," she said. 6 years ago, Tayuya was one of the 4 Oto ninjas sent to escort Sasuke Uchiha to Oto. That mission, which should have been really simple, ended in disaster for both sides. The Sound 4 left 2 jounin in bad condition, before having to deal with a pursuit team of genin, led by a rookie chunin. The pursuit team had whittled their numbers, forcing them to peel off, and deal with them one by one. Tayuya had been amongst the last, dealing with the chunin, Shikamaru Nara. She had him on the ropes, preparing for the final blow, when Temari from Suna appeared, and turned the tables. One summon, and Tayuya was left with her lower torso buried under a fallen tree. Tayuya should have died at that point. The curse mark given to her by Orochimaru had a regenerative ability, but it was rather limited. Tayuya injuries were too severe for it to heal. However, fate had something else in mind. Tayuya woke up in a hut. Flashback. Tayuya slowly woke up, groaning in pain, as her entire body ached. She weakly looked around, taking in a simple room of a wooden hut. She was laying on a bed mat, with a blanket over her. "Where am I?" she grunted out. "My vacation home," came a soft old voice. Tayuya turned, to find an old woman enter, wearing a travel-worn kimono. "My name is Kango Hiei." Tayuya looks at her. "Where am I? Besides in a crappy little room?" Kango Hiei came over, and dipped a cloth in a bowl of water. "We're about 10 miles south from where I found you. You've been unconscious for 4 days, and your fever broke just last night." She placed the cloth on Tayuya's head. Tayuya groaned. "When can I get out of here? I need to get back home, and fast." "Leave? Sorry, but you won't be leaving," the old lady said, as she started to make some tea. Tayuya growled weakly. "Why? You some type of slaver? Going to sell me off to some fat bastard whose dick hasn't been erect in 10 years? She said. Kango Hiei looks at her. "No. Because your legs and spine are too damaged even for a ninja medic to heal. You're paralyzed from the waist down." Tayuya's eyes widened. You're fucking me, right?" she whispered. As Kango Hiei shook her head, Tayuya's eyes began to water, and she tried to move her legs. She screamed and cursed, but nothing happened. She finally gave up, and looked away, crying softly. Flashback ends. After that, Kango Hiei had done her best to care for Tayuya. At first, the former Oto Kunoichi had wanted to die, and had even tried to kill herself a few times. But eventually, she decided to at least try to live a life. So now, she worked with Kangokyai in a small store that sold supplies and healing services. Tayuya muttered to herself, as she pulled up the book she had been reading, before the male she had recently injured had bothered her. Truth be told, she had been rather edgy lately, with some dreams she had been having, dreams of a blonde-haired man and a red-haired woman, who smiled happily at her. They were really fuzzy, so Tayuya had no idea if they were memories or dreams. All she knew was that she didn't like it, as it was depriving her of sleep. The bell over the door rang, and Tayuya looked up, to see a rather average-looking man enter. He stopped, and looked around, before moving forward, allowing the door to close. He headed to an aisle, and Tayuya shrugged, going back to her book. A few minutes later, the man approached with a bottle of water, and a bag of chips. Tayuya rang them up. "That'll be 100 ryo," she muttered, not really paying attention to the man. Tayuya of Oto? The man asked. Tayuya froze, and slowly looked up, to see the man disappear in a henge, revealing a figure in a cloak, hood, and a mask that only had eye slits, and the kanji 4 root on the forehead of his mask. Who are you? She whispered in fear. Danzō-sama wants a word with you, he said simply. In that moment, a syringe entered her neck, as another root agent appeared behind her. She felt her body grow weak, as she slumped forward. The first root looked up, and nodded, as he headed into the back. The second one grabbed Tayuya, and stealthily exited the store. Soon after, the first one joined him on a nearby rooftop, cleaning blood from the kunoichi he carried. It's done, he said. The other root nodded, and they left. Soon after, the store erupted in flames, caused by a fire started in the back room. Konoha, Mission Briefing Room Kakashi Hatake, Mado Gai, Kurinai Yuhi, and Asuma Saratobi all stood at attention before Tsunade. At her side were Kushina and Naruto, in full armor. Despite the fact she was wearing her mask, everyone in the room knew that Oni's companion Zetsumiya was actually Kushina Namikaze, wife of Minato Namikaze. Kurinai, Asuma, and Gai were in awe, and some fear of the woman. Kakashi, however, was avoiding looking at her. Tsunade sighed. I've called the 4 of you here for a highly dangerous and risky mission. But if we succeed, we may be able to hinder our enemies severely. They all nodded, as Tsunade continued. We'll be moving the majority of our forces from the fortress of Ishimori Stone Forest. Kumo will see this, and hopefully, commit a large force of their ninjas to try and take the fortress. I'm sending you 4 to reinforce the fortress. Asuma took a drag on his cigarette. Hokage-sama, if I may? What exactly is the point of this? It seems as if you want them to take the fortress. Tsunade nodded to Oni. In a way. I want Kumo to commit to this battle, so that Kumogakure no Sato is less defended. That way, Oni here, who will have snuck past enemy lines, can attack the city itself, and force Kumo to redirect its forces to protecting the city. As it stands, Kumo is able to send its ninja after us, with absolutely no one to harass them. Not only that, but if we force Kumo to fall back, it could get Kiri to side with us as well. Asuma nodded and steps back. Kakashi speaks up at this point. What about Ishimori? Do we let them take it, and harass them guerrilla style, or hold the fortress to the last? Tsunade ponders it for a moment. If all goes well, it won't matter if we hold the fortress. I'd rather have as many of our forces survive. If need be, retreat, and harass the enemy forces, she said. The 4 jounin nod. Understood, Hokage-sama. Tsunade nods. I expect you all to be on your way tomorrow by 0700 hours. Dismissed. The 4 jounin left, and Oni and Kushina both looked at Tsunade. If that will be all, Hokage-sama, we'll be off. Kushina said. Tsunade raised a hand. Wait. Kushina, I'd like to talk to you, please, she said softly. Kushina tensed, and looked at Oni, who simply nodded. Kushina turned back to Tsunade. Fine. Oni went to wait outside, as Kushina sat down in a chair. Tsunade took a deep breath, as she looked at her. Kushina, I'm not going to excuse what I did. I failed you, and I failed your son. I know nothing I say or will do will make up for that. But I want to try. Please, Kushina. I'll do anything to prove to you how sorry I am, and how much your friendship means to me. Kushina simply sat there, her face still hidden behind her mask. Finally, she reached up and removed it, her face neutral. Tsunade, you were one of the people I was closest to when I lived in Konoha. You were like a second mother to me. I admit that I do want to have that back. But I cannot simply forgive you for what you did. You abandoned me when I needed you most. If you had been here to deliver Naruto, I would probably not have been kidnapped and sold off as a slave. Tsunade looked down, as Kushina continued. I may never be able to forget, or fully forgive you for that. But I would be no better than the people of this village, if I never forgave you. She sighed, as she looked down. If you can prove to me that you truly mean what you say, then I am willing to try and start our friendship over again. But you have a lot to do before that happens. Tsunade looked up, as Kushina stood, and made her way to the door. The red-haired kunoichi stopped. But I promise you this, Tsunade. If you ever betray me, or those close to me, I will make you wish you were never born. With that, she donned her mask and left. Naruto looked up as she approached. Everything okay? He asked. She nodded. Yeah. Everything's fine, she said as they headed out. Nearby on the rooftops, several figures were watching the door. One of them looked at another. Are you sure this is a good idea? He asked as he munched on some chips. Ino sighed as she looked at Chuji. We need to find out more about this guy. Anything we can find out will help us in case we get in trouble with him. Just wish Forehead Girl didn't have to work right now. She'd be a big help, strength-wise. Shikamaru sighed. We're not going to find anything out, he muttered. Niji listened to their fighting from across the street. I have to concur with Shikamaru-san, Hinata-sama. If what you said is true, we won't find much out. Hinata looked at him, and he shrunk back a bit. Well, we're going to find something out. This guy just doesn't sit well with me at all. Lee grinned. YOSH. Perhaps he will engage in a spar with me, so I may show him the flames of youth. Tenten smacked him. That will drive him off, and then we'll never get any information about it. A moment later, two figures exited the tower. One in black armor, the other masked. All the ninjas settled down, as they watched the pair head off. Before stealthily following them, Naruto swore to himself. It had to be them following us. He muttered to Kushina. She looked at him. Who are they, exactly? She asked. The remains of the Konoha 12. My friends, for the most part. He said. Kushina nods. Right. How do you want to deal with this? I can't let them know I'm alive. Not yet. So, we simply deal with what we can. He said. She nodded, as they headed to the Namikaze estate. Above, Kiba growled. They're going to the Namikaze estate. That bastard is living in my mom's friend's home. I oughta ... You'll do nothing, Kiba-san. Remember, this man almost single-handedly routed an IWA fortress of 500 ninja. Against him, you'd be a fly on an elephant's backside. Shino said, as Kiba growled in anger. Naruto and Kushina arrived outside the estate, and stopped, as they saw someone leaning against the wall. They both stopped, as Kakashi slowly looked up. He moved towards them, but stopped, as Ki impacted against him. Kushina approached him, pulling off her mask. Hello, Kakashi, she said coldly. Kakashi remained rooted, frozen by her killer intent, as she approached him. KK Kushina, please let me ... Explain nothing, Kakashi. I've heard that you were my son's sensei, and I don't care if you were. What I care about was the fact that before that, you had nothing to do with my son. Nothing, she shouted. That's not true. I obeyed sensei's wishes. I made sure I was part of the ANBU guard that watched over him, and every time I was on duty, Naruto was well protected. If I had known he was yours and Minato's son, I would have done even more. I would have adopted him. He shouted, tears falling from his eye. Kushina was about to retort, when she felt Oni's clawed gauntlet on her shoulder. She turned, as he looked at her. Mom, he has raised 1 point. When I was younger I remember one ANBU was always watching my back. One with a dog mask, and hair just like his. He may have been a lousy sensei, but he did watch out for me. He said in the ancient language. Kushina, who had been studying the ancient language, simply nodded, before looking back at Kakashi. If what you said was true, then you have earned my gratitude for that, Kakashi. But I've heard about how you also were a less than spectacular sensei to my son. Why did you abandon him, for the Uchiha? She asked. Kakashi looked down, shame in his visible eye. He hesitated before speaking. I wish I could say my only reason was because the council ordered me to, but that would be a lie. There was that, and then, it was because I felt I owed Obito a debt. A debt I could pay by teaching him. I swear, I was going to teach Naruto everything I could after the Chunin exams, but the invasion left us weakened, and ... He was interrupted by Kushina's fist smashing into his face, sending him crashing back. He looked up in fear, as Kushina stood over him. You abandoned my son's training over a stupid debt, and orders form people who have no business involving themselves in shinobi affairs. You could have fulfilled your debt without abandoning my son. And your loyalty is to the Hokage, not to the council. She said, staring down at him. Kakashi, you are lower than trash, she said, turning away. Kakashi hung his head, and left, as Kushina looked to Naruto. I'm going back inside, Oni-san. I'll leave you to deal with the others. The other shinobi watching widened their eyes, as Kushina entered the estate. Naruto looked at the roofs they were on, his voice becoming guttural. "Well?" he asked, crossing his arms. They sheepishly hopped down. Tenten stammered out a response. Oni-san, we were just just spying on me, right? Wanted to get info on me, yes?" he asked. "Can you blame us?" Hinata muttered. Naruto heard that, and turned to her. "I don't go prying into your business, do I?" He looked at her eyes, which stared back with distrust and slight anger. Shikamaru, sensing a possible fight brewing, stepped in. "Oni-san, we're sorry if we offended you. We are simply curious about you." At that moment, Anxia's head snaked over the wall of the Namake's estate, and looked down at the Konoha shinobi. She growled softly, causing them all to back up slightly. Naruto chuckled, as he crossed his arms. "Oh, you're curious, all right. You're curious about my abilities and weaknesses, in case I turn traitor and you have to fight me. But I understand. You're just doing what you're trained to do." They all looked sheepish, save for Hinata, who simply stood there, staring back at him. Naruto finally sighed. "Have I done something to offend you, Hyuga-san? Because I don't much appreciate the hostility coming from you," he asked. Hinata growled in response. Her dream from the previous night was still fresh in her mind. She didn't know what it meant, but all she knew was this mercenary, this dragon rider before her was not what he seemed to be. "You haven't done anything. I just don't trust people who sell their skills to the highest bidder," she said, as she turned and walked away. Shino slowly stepped forward, and bowed. "You'll have to excuse Hinata-san. She has never been the same since we lost a friend of ours," he said. Naruto slowly nodded. Was it the Uchiha? I heard of his defection, and how he was quite the heartthrob amongst the ladies." Most everyone blanched at that, while Kiba laughed. "Hinata upset over Sasuke? Ha! That's a laugh. She's upset because of Naruto ... Kiba was shut up by a rough elbow to his stomach, courtesy of Tenten. But Naruto had heard enough, as he looked at the retreating Hyuga's back. "I see, she cared for the Uzumaki boy, didn't she?" he asked quietly. Ino smacked Kiba upside the head, muttering, "Way to go," while Niji answered, "Yes. My cousin is upset at his loss, especially when she learned what our clan had done to him. Ever since then, she has become the opposite of what she once was. If anything, she has become the ideal Hyuga." There was no pride or joy in his voice, only regret. Naruto simply nodded again. "Yes," he said softly. There was an awkward silence before Lee spoke up. Oni-san? I was wondering if you would honor me with a spar?" he asked. Naruto stared ahead, before shaking his head and looking at Lee. "Your name?" "Rock Lee, the second green beast of Konoha," Lee proudly announced. Naruto simply nodded. "Yes, Lee. Madogai was your sensei. Well, Lee, I would love to give you a spar, but not today. I'm going out on a mission tomorrow. Perhaps when I return," he said. Lee nodded. "Of course, Oni-san. Thank you for agreeing to a most youthful event." Tenten smacked him. "Would you shut up about youth?" she asked. Lee Simple started crying anime river tears, while Oni chuckled to himself. "Most amusing. But if you all will excuse me, I have to get ready for my mission tomorrow." With that he bowed, and entered the estate. The others all looked at each other. "That was interesting," Shino said. "The guy scares me," Kiba muttered, rubbing his head, while Akamaru woofed next to him. "Did you see that sword? I've never seen one that long," Tenten gushed, now finally able to be her weapon fangirl self. This caused everyone to face plant. Inside, Naruto had stopped, and leaned against the wall, as Anxia came over, and nudged him with her snout. "That's wrong?" she asked. Naruto looked up, speaking in his normal voice. "Hinata, did you see her? She was just like Niji or Sasuke. So cold and angry, and from what I've heard, she's one of the most bloodthirsty ninjas in the village." He looked down. "Did I really affect her that much?" Kyubi sighed. "Yes. I swear, men are so oblivious to a woman's feelings. She used to stalk you all the time. If I didn't know better, I'd say she was head over heels in love with you. Why no one told you is beyond me," she said. Naruto looked down. "Then I need to make things up to her, when the time is right," he said, As he got up and headed inside, border of Suna and Konoha, four figures slowly made their way through the sparse wasteland that was the border between the deserts of Wind Country and the forests of Fire Country. Sasuke sighed as he looked over his companions. Shortly after killed Orochimaru, Sasuke had left, visiting the various bases Orochimaru had made around the elemental nations. The first was a tall teenage boy, who he had found in Orochimaru's northernmost base. Going simply by the name of Jugo, the orange-haired teenager had a special ability to morph his body, increasing his strength, speed, and capabilities. But this came at the cost of him being insane and bloodthirsty. Orochimaru had agreed to try and help the boy, but instead, had simply experimented with the boy's abilities, and used it to create his curse mark. Jugo had found a friend in the now-dead Kimimaro Kagaya, one of Orochimaru's bodyguards, and vessel of choice. Kimimaro had befriended him, and had helped him remain calm and in control. When Kimimaro died, fighting against Gaara of the Sand, Jugo had been left alone. When Sasuke had freed him, Jugo had almost killed him, while in a crazed state. That was, until Sasuke had explained how Kimimaro died helping him. Jugo began to calm down, and then agreed to join Sasuke, to see the full nature of Kimimaro's sacrifice. Next was Karin, who Sasuke had found at Orochimaru's southern island base. Karin had red hair that was smooth on one side, and spiky on the other. She also had red eyes behind glasses. Karin had been left in charge of the southern base, and was highly skilled in sensing chakra and healing. She also seemed to be lusting after Sasuke, as she tried to seduce him almost as soon as he had asked her to join him, and the last member of the team. The last was actually the first to join Sasuke's group. Suigetsu Huzuki had once wanted to be a member of the Seven Swordsmen of Kiri, and had trained under them. When the group had been disbanded due to Zabuza's failed coup attempt, Suigetsu had vowed to one day to take all the swords of the Seven Swordsmen. Soon after, he was captured by Orochimaru and experimented on. The silver-haired, purple-eyed youth could now turn his body into a liquid, giving him great control over water. After Sasuke had freed him, they had stopped at Wave, where Suigetsu swiped the sword of Zabuza, the Kubikiri Hocho, from his grave at Wave Country. These three had agreed to join Sasuke on his quest to train, and eventually kill Itachi. And not a day had gone by that Sasuke hadn't regretted his decision on finding Suigetsu and Karin. "Will you just shut up already, shark mouth? I'm so sick and tired of hearing you complain about us not hunting down the rest of that tin collection you want so bad," Karin muttered. Suigetsu growled. "Don't disrespect the swords," he growled, adjusting the blade on his back. Because it was so big, he had to wear it with the hilt removed, until he was ready to fight. Jugo simply watched the sky as he walked. He sighed softly. Sasuke was mulling over the latest rumor they had heard in the last town, that Konoha had gone to hire the infamous demon dragon rider. In the war they had gotten themselves into. He looked up into the sky. The demon dragon rider, now there is an opponent. A man capable of what he can do is highly skilled. If I fought him, I could know for certain that I was ready to face Itachi. He sighed as he looked ahead. "OWWW! Stop it, you crazy bitch!" Suigetsu's shout caused him to turn, in time to see Karin pull her fist from the center of Suigetsu's chest, before landing a kick that caused his head to splash apart. He sighed as Suigetsu slowly reformed, while Karin smirked and rushed over. "He was being mean, Sasuke-kun. Surely you can understand," she said, draping her arms over his shoulders. He simply moved them off. "There is no time to play. Itachi was rumored to be seen in a small town north of us," he said, as he walked off. Karin sighed as she followed. Jugo picked up Suigetsu, who muttered, as his head was still reforming. He drank from a water bottle. "Damn stupid crazy bitch, only thinking about Sasuke and his co-dot." He was stopped by Jugo jostling him. "Please don't talk about Sasuke-san like that. It makes me irritated," Jugo said calmly. Konoha Fortress Ishimori. 3 days later, the fortress of Ishimori was the stronghold of Konoha's northern defenses, in times of war. The fortress was named after the rocky area it inhabited. A long time ago, a lush forest had grown at the foot of a mountain in northeastern Fire Country. That was, until the mountain turned out to be a rather unstable volcano. One day, it erupted so violently that the forest didn't even have a chance to burn. The trees were petrified, turning the forest into a maze of petrified trees. It was in the middle of this maze of petrified trees and rocky terrain that Konoha had built its northernmost defense, a fortress with high sloping walls, towers with murder holes, and a well-fortified gate. The fortress, due to its position and location, needed only about 400 ninjas to defend it against a force almost 5 times their size. In the main building, the Jounin commander looked at the report before him. So wait, we're to take all but 100 ninjas, head into the petrified trees, let Kumo take this fortress, and harass them until they're forced to retreat? He asked, looking up at Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurenai. Kakashi nods. Yes. You need to make it look like you and the rest of your troops are moving to help hold up our defenses along the northwest front, against Oto and Iwa. We'll stay here, and hold as long as we can. The commander looked at the orders again. And pray tell, why can't we simply do that from within the fortress? Kakashi sighed. Because if we did that, we couldn't draw out a goodly portion of their army to take this fortress, and harass the countryside. If we do that, then Kumo is weakened in its own defense, allowing someone to attack Kumo, and force them to withdraw their troops. The Jounin scoffed. And who would be that suicidal? Kurenai answered. The demon dragon rider. The Jounin's eyes widened, before looking down at the paper. He hesitated before speaking. I'll make it 125. Give them more of a fight, he said. Kakashi nods. Right. We'll make ready for invasion, he said. With that, the 4 Jounin headed off, while the commander sighed. To the far north, well past the Kumo border, Naruto gently stroked Anxia's back. Kushina had stayed behind, to protect the Namake's estate. Naruto had been able to move fast and light after that. Shortly after landing the previous day, Naruto had sent clones north to Kumo. Some had used his sexy jutsu, but with variations that made them look like different women, some even making themselves look average. Others, who were regular shadow clones, had applied latex disguises over parts of their face, along with wound makeup, hair dye, and contact lenses. They had slowly began to infiltrate Kumo, sending back info via mental connections with Anxia. They were also searching for places to plant surprises, for when Naruto invaded, Naruto sighed softly, as he got off Anxia, who looked at him. What is it, little one? She asked, nudging him. He sighed. I don't know, ever since I ran into the others. I feel conflicted. They're all my friends, and yet, am I not just hurting them by concealing my true identity? She sighed softly, as he removed his helmet and chain coif. She licked his head, causing his hair to stick up more. Truth be told, there is no easy answer. We are not in a position where we could openly reveal your identity. But the longer you put it off, the more it will hurt them. You must go with your heart. Good advice, Fire Breath, Kyubi said mockingly. I always found the heart leads you down the stupid path. Your instincts are far better, as they never deceive you, she said. Naruto sighed. You two are like my angel and demon, he said as he sat down. I guess I'll just see what comes. They both sighed, and went silent, as Naruto began sharpening his sword. Kumo, 4 days later. The Raikage looked over the report before him. Is this correct? He asked, his eyes looking over the recon Kumo Anbu before him. Yes, Raikage-sama. Konoha has pulled almost 3/4 of their garrison at Ishimori. They were headed to the west, to probably shore up defenses against Iwa and Oto. The Raikage growled. Do they consider us less of a threat? Well, as per your orders, we've been making light, sporadic raids, while we gather the main force for invasion. I'm guessing they figure we won't commit a large force. The Anbu said. The Raikage smirked. Then we'll teach them not to count us out, deploy 1/3 of our forces to take Ishimori, and commence raids on the surrounding countryside. The Anbu nods and leaves. The Raikage smirked. I'll teach you not to underestimate Kumo, he said. Outside his window, a window cleaner with a bald head, eye patch, and a crippled leg smirked to himself, as he relayed the info to Anxia. Chapter 10. Kumo meets Oni. Kumo, the next day. The Raikage, simply named A, smiled as he inspected the force before him. 3,000 ninjas, 1/3 of Kumo's entire attack force, stood ready for their invasion of northern fire country. He nodded in approval, as he turned to the commander of the entire force. Yugito ni, Jinchuriki of the Nibi, and Sword of Kumo. The blonde Jounin saluted him, as he came over. Raikage-sama, we're ready to move out, on your orders. she said. Dade nodded. Very good, Yugito-san. Your force will advance first and attack the fortress. I'll send a second force after you have taken the fortress. With most of our force already holding their northern territory, Konoha will have to shift its focus back on us, and that will give Oto and Iwa more room to invade further in. As Yugito nodded, he turned to the men and women. Now is our time! Our time to destroy Konoha, and take what should rightfully belong to our village! Fight for the glory and honor that await us with victory! The shinobi cheered, and raised their arms. Within moments, they streamed out of the village, heading south. High above, too small to be really seen by those on the ground, Naruto watched the whole force move. However, he wasn't looking through his eyes. They had changed into a vivid gold green, with a black slit. Anxia's eyes were glowing as well, as she watched the army. Naruto and Anxia had learned that when they were flying, their minds could merge, and Naruto would be able to see everything Anxia saw, and felt everything she did. Naruto slowly pulled his conscience back, and sighed softly. They're on the move. But according to one of my clones, the Raikage will send a second force to back up this one. Anxia mentally nodded. Isn't that good? It means less troops for us to deal with here, she said. Naruto nods. True, but it also means Kumo has more troops left alive. I'll need to rectify that, he thought. Let's get back to camp. I have some ideas. Anxia turned and headed out towards the woods, where she and Naruto were camping out. Back in Kumo, A had returned to his office. Inside was a man who looked like a younger version of him. Both of them had dark skin and white hair. A wore his Raikage robe, which was open to reveal his muscled chest. He also had on huge metal weights around his forearms, and a white mustache and goatee. The other man was Kurabi, his younger brother, and Jinchuriki of the Hachibi. He wore sunglasses, a beard, and a scarf, but no shirt. He also carried 8 swords on his back. A looked to him. Kurabi, you're going to be the main defense of this village, with most of our forces afield. I'm going to need you to be on alert, even if we probably won't be attacked. The Hachibi Jinchuriki grinned. Yo, bro, don't worry about it. I'll chop any enemy to tiny bits. He began writing that down, while A had a tick mark. I thought I told you not to rhyme near me? He said. Kurabi just smirked, as he put his notepad away. I think you did, maybe. But nothing can stop the rhyming bee. With that, he disappeared, right before A smashed a fist where he stood. Damn it, bye! He shouted. All of Kumo heard it, and shook their heads in despair. Ishimori. 3 days later, the fortress of Ishimori had been a hive of activity. With most of the defenders gone, the remainder had to shore up defenses in certain areas, to make the ruse work, and draw out the fight against Kumo's forces. Kakashi looked towards the north, along Ishi's strongest wall. The fortress had been designed with its strongest and most well-defended wall towards the direction of Kumo. Its gate was placed south, preventing enemies from simply attacking it, and gaining easy entrance to the fort. Not only that, but the wall over the gate had been covered in explosive seals that could be activated from a distance. They would bury the main gate, and anyone under it, while the defenders held the breach, or escaped down a secret tunnel exit hidden in the barracks. All along the wall, ninja-ready kunai, shuriken, ballistae, and small catapults armed with explosive munitions. They wouldn't be as effective against shinobi as they were against bands of bandits, or ronin samurai. But they would still help in this battle. Kakashi looked into the distance, where the smoke from campfires could be seen. Last night, the lookouts had spotted the arrival of Kumo's forces, which had set up camp a few miles from the fortress. Now, they saw the movements of Kumo's forces advancing, making their way through the fallen, petrified trees. He looked along the wall, to his fellow defenders, who readied themselves for combat. I in the vanguard of the Kumo force, a Chunin muttered to his comrade. Can't we move faster? It'll take us half the day to get within range of the wall at this speed. His comrade was about to answer, when Yugito came over. The reason we're taking it slow is for cover. This way, they don't have definite targets, and we'll be that much closer before they can attack us, she said. That's why you're a Chunin, and not in charge. No head for strategy. Now move. She moved onward, while the Chunin flipped her the bird behind her back. Asuma took one last drag on his cigarette. I sure as hell hope this works, he said, looking at his fellow jounin. They nodded, as Kakashi looked ahead. He raised his hand, and several of the ninjas took up position at the weapon emplacements. The Kumo forces advanced further, and Kakashi dropped his head. Fire! The defenders fired both catapult and ballistae towards the advancing ninja forces. Yugito cursed as she saw the incoming weaponry. Take cover! The Kumo forces ducked down as explosive barrels exploded above them, or amongst the petrified trees. The ballistae bolts buried themselves deep into the petrified trees and exploded as well. Several Kumo ninja fell from shrapnel or the explosions themselves. Yugito looked up. Get moving! Get against the wall, below their firing range! The Kumo ninja leapt up and began running, under a barrage of heavy weapons fire. Kakashi watched as they got closer. Open up! He shouted. All along the wall, the shinobi began throwing kunai and shuriken. The Kumo shinobi tried to return fire, while dodging and maneuvering through the obstacles. Several explosions went off, as explosive notes that had been set up amidst the petrified trees, catching several of the Kumo shinobi off guard. Several were killed outright, their bodies ripped apart by the explosions. Others were critically injured, or killed by shrapnel. Despite this, the Kumo shinobi continued the charge, making it to a point where the siege weapons couldn't target the front lines. These shinobi began launching kunai and shuriken at the defenders, trying to lay down cover for their comrades. Yugito joined them, growling, as she watched her force still struggling through the petrified trees. This isn't working. We need to get our sappers up here, and now. She looked up the wall. Stun tags on 3. She told the shinobi close to her. Several shinobi gathered together tags with kanji for lightning, and placed them on kunai, and launched them over the wall. The tags ignited, launching bolts of low-level lightning blasts, meant to stun enemies. Kakashi's eyes went wide. Down! He shouted. Most of the defenders heeded him, but a number were still hit, and fell to the ground, their central nervous systems temporarily overloaded. As Yugito's forward force continued to keep the defenders down, a group of specialized ninjas, skilled in destroying enemy defenses, quickly rushed forward. They crouched by the wall, as Yugito joined them. Can you bust through this wall? She asked. No way. Too thick for our current armament. We need some heavy-duty siege explosive tags. Best bet is to try and hit the gate, the jounin in charge of them said. Yugito nodded, and pointed to a squad of shinobi. All right. You 5, protect them as they head for the gate. We'll keep them focused here, she said. The group of shinobi nodded, and moved out, while she moved down the line. Come on. Keep their heads down. Let's move it, people. Kakashi looked down, noticing a group of Kumo ninjas had gotten too close to the wall, and were starting to scale it. He smirked, as he pointed to a pair of shinobi standing by a pair of boiling cauldrons. Oil now! He shouted. The 2 shinobi tipped the cauldrons, causing them to pour boiling oil into grates that had chutes leading along the north wall. These chutes branched off into openings all along the wall. As the oil ran down the chutes, it would branch off, spraying out of the holes onto enemies below. The shinobi who had started running up the wall screamed as the boiling liquid fell, scalding them. They fell, burning both inside and out. Yugito cursed in anger and horror as she saw this. Inside of her, Nibi growled as well. Those fools dare hurt our friends and comrades, kitten. Maybe we should show them what they're dealing with. Yugito growled. I couldn't agree more, she thought, as a deep, burning blue chakra began to seep out of her body. Kurinai had caught a group of Kumo shinobi in a genjutsu, and watched as they screamed in fear, before dying of strangulation. She turned, as she felt a power similar, but weaker to the one she felt 18 years ago, when she was still thinking of being an academy student. A power that took the life of Minato Namikaze to defeat. She saw a dark chakra flare around the blonde Kumo kunoichi. Kakashi! She shouted, pointing to the kunoichi. Kakashi turned, and his eyes widened. Dear Kami, he whispered, as Yugito leapt up. She landed on the wall, a kunai flashing, and slitting the throat of 2 Konoha ninja near her. She glared at him, and charged forward. Kakashi barely parried it in time. You will pay for what you did to my shinobi, she said, as she shoved against him. Kakashi was a strong ninja, but even found himself struggling against the power he was facing. Yugito grinned, as the other hand came up, and smashed into his arm, knocking it aside. She spun with the blow, coming around and kicking at Kakashi. The copy nin barely blocking it, but the power of the blow knocked him back a few steps. Yugito moved to attack, only to be stopped by a green blur. Guy appeared, holding his stance. "I'm afraid I can't let you hurt my most youthful rival," he said. Yugito growled and attacked, only for Guy to block. The two entered into a fast-paced taijutsu match. Below, the Kumo shinobi watched in awe. Yugito was the fastest shinobi in their village, second to none. For this shinobi to match her speed was an unexpected surprise. For Konoha shinobi, it was the same. Except they were surprised at Yugito's speed. There was a momentary lull in the battle. Before it picked up again, Yugito ducked under a spinning kick and went to stab Guy in the leg, only to be blocked by Guy's arm. He quickly struck her in the chest, sending her skidding. She stopped, panting from the blow, while Guy examined his fist, which was slightly burnt by the chakra flaring around her. "You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you?" he asked. She growled. "So what?" she asked, as she attacked again. Guy blocked, but was struck by a quick palm thrust to his shoulder. He gasped slightly, but quickly recovered. Meanwhile, Kakashi had recovered, only to find them losing the battle. More and more of Kumo's shinobi were now trying to scale the wall, following in Yugito's attack. He looked over his troops, who were launching weapon and jutsu down upon them. He quickly rushed to Asuma, who used his trench knives and wind chakra to slice open any Kumo shinobi in his range. "Asuma, we can't hold the wall. Start pulling them back into the courtyard." Asuma nodded, and began ordering the defenders to fall back. Kakashi turned, and immediately began hand signs. "Chew on this," he muttered. As he finished, Yugito leaned back from another of Guy's punches. She grinned, as she moved to strike while he was open, only to be blasted back by a dragon of water. She flipped, and landed, looking up to see Kakashi charging forward, a ball of lightning in his fist. She cursed, as she jumped, flipping over him, only for her eyes to widen as Kakashi poofed into smoke. The real Kakashi appeared above her, shooting flames down at her. The force of the fireball smashed her into the wall. Kakashi landed next to Guy. "You all right?" he asked. Guy nodded. "She was a most youthful adversary," he said. Kakashi was about to respond, when there was a sudden explosion opposite of their position. The gate had been blown open, and a small group of Kumo shinobi rushed in, launching kunai with explosive tags. At the same time, there was a flare of chakra, and Yugito exploded from the crater she was in. Her chakra had turned a dark blue, and was shaped like a cat, with one tail. Both Kakashi and Guy gulped, as she charged at them. Raikage's office. "Raikage-sama! Urgent message from Yugito-san's camp!" A's secretary rushed into the office, where the Raikage was busy pumping iron. He stopped, as he looked up. "What is it?" he asked. She quickly handed him the message. "A shinobi from her camp sent this message 10 minutes ago, via lizard summon. Yugito's forces have begun overrunning the wall, and were moving in on the gate. Ishimori is expected to fall within the hour," she said excitedly. The Raikage grinned. "Good. Send word for our second force to march out. Once Ishimori and the surrounding area is secured, they're to begin raiding south, and force Konoha to divert men to block us. With any luck, Oto and IWA will capitalize, and begin their own pushes forward." The secretary nodded, and rushed off. A grinned, as he went back to his weights. "Soon, Konoha, you'll get what you deserve." Throughout the village, shinobi began spreading the word. The second force began to gather, ready to move out. One of Naruto's infiltration clones, disguised as a street cleaner, noticed the increased activity of Kumo's shinobi forces. He related to one of the dozen or so messenger shadow clones Naruto created daily. This clone dispersed, sending the info back to Naruto, who nodded. "They're preparing the second wave of invasion. Kumo will be left with 4,000 shinobi, the Raikage, and the Hachibi Jinchuriki. Which is more than enough to defeat me, if we don't play this carefully," he said. Anxia nodded. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "Night attack?" Naruto shook his head. "Normally, yes. But this battle isn't about destroying Kumo. I want to minimize civilian casualties. A night attack would make it harder to distinguish targets. My idea is to attack at dawn. Undoubtedly, the Raikage will spread the news of their victory, and his village will celebrate. If we attack at dawn, most of the defenders will be too disoriented to react immediately." Kyubi chuckled. "Sounds about right. I remember when me and some of the other Biju would pretend to be humans. Man, you sure can get wasted." Both Naruto and Anxia sweat dropped. Anyways, our main targets are the village's wall, these warehouses here, here, and here. We're also going to target the ANBU headquarters. My clones have also planted explosive tags at key defensive points. If we succeed, Kumo's defensive capabilities, as well as its ability to make war, will be severely crippled. They'll be forced to withdraw their offensive forces to defend Kumo, until the defenses are restored. Kumo will be out of the war, and remain defensive for years. Anxia seemed to grin. So we strafe the targets your clones haven't gotten to? Naruto nodded. Yeah. Then I'll take the fight to the ground, and see what I can do of destroying their morale further. I'll have to be cautious, in case their remaining Jinchuriki, or the Raikage come after me. Anxia nodded. I'll continue to fly cover for you, while you do that. Naruto nodded. Right. Well, the plan is laid out. Let's hunker down, till tonight, he said, as he laid back on a bedroll he had put out. Anxia curled up protectively around him. Ishimori the battle had turned against the Konoha ninja. They had managed to stall the assault through the gate by triggering the explosive seals in the wall over the gate. The shinobi there had jumped out of the way, and soon struggled over the rubble, followed by enemy shinobi who followed them around, and streamed through the breach. The north wall had been overrun. With the exception of the area where Yugito, Guy, and Kakashi fought, the Kumo shinobi had begun swarming over the wall. The fortress's defenders had pulled back into the courtyard, moving to protect the barracks, as it was their only retreat now. Kurenai watched as they slowly became surrounded. Asuma, we have to fall back, she shouted. Asuma shook his head, as he parried a kunai with one of his trench knives. Not without Guy and Kakashi. He shouted back. As if to answer him, Kakashi crashed in front of him, bleeding from a chest wound that looked like claws. Guy landed nearby, barely sticking his landing. On the wall, Yugito grinned, as she prepared to pounce. Guy looked up. I fear she may be more than a match for me and Kakashi-san, he said, as he grabbed up Kakashi. Asuma nodded to them. All right. All forces, fall back into the barracks. Move. Around 86 shinobi retreated into the barracks, followed by the 4 jounin. They quickly barricaded the entrance behind them. Yugito landed, as her forces gathered around her. They think that they'll be able to hold us off in there? Burn it down, she shouted. Several of the shinobi, who were skilled in fire jutsus, prepared to launch their attacks at the barracks, when it suddenly exploded. Many of the Kumo shinobi dropped to the ground, while several were hit by flying debris. Yugito slowly stood up, Nibi's chakra fluttering, as she looked at the smoking crater that was the barracks. Several shinobi rushed forward, looking through the wreckage. Finally, one stood up. There's no one here, Yugito-san, Yugito growled. Then they got away, but how? She asked, as Nibi's chakra receded. It doesn't matter. Begin work in securing the fortress, and get the wounded taken care of. Most of the shinobi rushed off to do as ordered, while Yugito turned to another shinobi. You! Send a message to Kumo. Let the Raikage know of our success. He nodded, and rushed off. Yugito took a deep breath. Those two really pushed me to my limit. Anymore, and I'd have to have gone to Two Tails. Well, I haven't had a chance to play in a while. Nibi purred form inside of her. Yugito chuckled. There will be time later. I have a feeling we'll have many fights ahead of us, she said. Kumo, that night in the village of Kumogaku no Sato, celebrations were running throughout the city. To a simple observer, it would seem that Kumo had already won the war. The Raikage smirked, as he stood on his balcony. Today is a good day. We've struck Konoha a blow, showing them their foolishness in underestimating us. His brother was a bit more reserved, for a change. I don't know, bro. This all seemed too easy. Maybe Konoha is trying to make us dizzy? A growled at his brother. What is that supposed to mean? Kirabi stopped rapping. I'm just saying, maybe they pulled away on purpose. What if we were supposed to invade Ishimori? What if they wanted us to? The Raikage blinked. That makes no sense. Konoha's defenses are stretched thin. Why gives us a stronghold in their northern lands? Kirabi shrugged. I don't know. I just think it was way too easy. A smiled. Maybe, brother. But for now, relax. Go and celebrate with the rest of the village. Kirabi nodded. You're right, bro. Time for me to put on a show, he said, as he jumped off the balcony, and towards the village below. The Raikage smirked, as he turned back to his office and pulled out a bottle of sake. To future victories, he said, toasting himself. On the other side of Kumo's wall, a dark figure finished strapping a clawed gauntlet onto his left arm. Naruto picked up his helmet and slowly slipped it onto his head, strapping it on. Time for the show, he said, his eyes glowing red and his voice turning demonic. He grinned as he turned to his dragon, who gave a dragon-like smirk. All through the night, the parties continued. Slowly, as the moon began to set, the parties began to die down, as many of their participants staggered home drunk or fell asleep in their parties. Meanwhile, a dark shape slowly took off from outside the wall and ascended into the night sky. It became a black speck, which headed to the mountain the Raikage Tower was built into. Before landing high above it.as, the moon began to disappear beyond the horizon. Naruto smirked as he sent a small chakra flare, one that all his clones picked up. So it begins, he said. On Kumo's wall, a sentry sighed wistfully as he watched a couple stagger from the bar they had been partying. The man stopped the woman with him, pressed her against the wall of the bar, and began making out with her. Lucky bastard, the sentry said, as he turned in time to catch a flash of movement near the wall tower to his right. What the dash? He started, only to be interrupted by the massive explosion from that location. It was followed by several more all along the wall, destroying towers, the gate, and several other key locations. A was awoken from an alcohol-induced slumber by the sounds of explosions and yells of confusion. He stumbled onto the balcony outside his office, rubbing his eyes. When he finished, his mouth dropped open in astonishment. The wall had been utterly ruined. Large sections had been destroyed at the base. Several sections of the city that were key defensive points had also been destroyed in explosions. As the Raikage looked over this, a roar sounded from above him. He turned in time to see a giant black creature plummet towards the village. It stretched its bat-like wings out and pulled up, letting out another roar as it flew over the carnage. In the streets below, shinobi and civilian alike stumbled out of their homes or bars. They stopped as they heard the roar. Then panic ensued as the feared demon dragon rider flew overhead. Naruto tilted his head, looking over the village as Anxia banked. My clones did well. Now head to those warehouses. Right, she said, as she banked and headed towards the outskirts of the populated area. As they approached the target area, Naruto grinned. Light M! He shouted. Anxia opened her mouth and let out a stream of fire. The flames engulfed the row of warehouses, lighting them up in a hellish inferno. The Raikage growled as he tried to shake himself free of the effects of the sake he consumed. He rushed into the streets, trying to bring order. You men, get the civilians to the shelters. You get some men, try to save the warehouses. The rest of you, with me, he shouted. Anxia made another pass over the warehouses before heading back towards the village. She headed low as Naruto freed himself of her saddle, gripping his sword and shield. Get ready! She shouted as they descended. Naruto braced himself and then leapt off, using his chakra to absorb the impact of his landing. He rolled and came to his feet, running towards a group of shinobi who were charging at him. The lead Kumo shinobi, a chunin, swung a kunai at him. Naruto ducked, swinging, and cutting the chunin's legs out from under him. He rose, slashing at the next shinobi, who was hewed in half. He blocked a punch with his shield, and stabbed that shinobi, before kicking, ripping open the stomach of the next one. The last one charged towards him. He spun in a circle to his left, bashing the shinobi with his shield, while still looking back. He slowly turned his head to the downed shinobi, advanced on him, and stabbed down, finishing him off. He looked up, to see more coming at him. He simply grinned behind his helmet. Keep them coming. Anxia headed for her last target, the Kumo ANBU headquarters. As she approached, a hail of kunai and shuriken rose to meet her. She rolled and dodged as best she could, and most simply pinged off her scales or missed. A few did tear at the vulnerable membrane on her wings, and she winced in pain. Not nearly enough, she thought, as she dived on the headquarters and let loose a torrent of flames. The building soon caught on fire and began to burn. The ANBU inside started pouring out, as Anxia banked away, launching a few fireballs before she did so for good measure. Naruto grinned as he sent a ninja crashing into a wall, knocking him out. So far, the Kumo shinobi had been charging at him in small groups, as they were still disorganized. He had slowly killed or knocked out every one of them. He suddenly looked up, to see 3 shinobi launch a series of lightning bolts at him. He rolled to one side, growling, as he raised a hand. Jiraiya Thiara Kalphus! Break their calves! He shouted. The spell did such as it was worded. The 3 shinobi fell, their calves broken. They screamed in pain, holding their legs, while Naruto lowered his hand. He turned in time to lean back from a sword that almost went through his neck. He jumped back, examining his opponent. You must be the Hachibi Jinchuriki, he said. I am the mighty Bai. Here to rain on your parade, He blinked, and looked at his notebook. Man, I must be slipping, he muttered, crossing that out. Naruto blinked. Right, well, unless you want to fight, I'll be on my way, he said, as he turned to go, only to block a slash with his shield. You ain't going anywhere. I'm going to make you pay for what you did tonight, Kurabi said, as he attacked with his sword. Naruto blocked, and counter-attacked. Kurabi leapt back, drawing out all of his swords. The two faced each other, before Kurabi attacked in a whirl of steel. Naruto grinned, as he found himself actually be really challenged. You're very skilled, he said, finding it hard to block all the attacks without both sword and shield. Kurabi suddenly flipped a few of his sword, changing his stance, and attacking with a leaping side spin. Naruto was caught off guard, and one of the Hachibi's Jinchuriki's swords slashed his tabard. Naruto backed up, looking down. The tabard had a diagonal slash on it, but the chain mail was undamaged. He looked up, growling. I like this tabard, he growled, as he tightened his grip on his sword. He became a black blur, and Kurabi barely was able to block. He gasped, as his sword was sheared in half. He looked up as Naruto attacked again. He jumped away. That sword is some strong steel. I definitely don't want to know how it feels, he said. Too bad, Naruto said, as he appeared, slashing. He left a cut on Kurabi's chest. The Kumo Jinchuriki jumped back, growling, as he held a hand to the cut. Already, steam was beginning to form, as it slowly healed. He looked up, as chakra began to leak out around him. Guess it's time to get serious, he said, as reddish-brown chakra formed around him, forming into a pair of horns and a tail. Naruto mentally cursed to himself. I gotta end this fast. I don't want to reveal Kyuubi's power. He drew on enough to give himself a boost, but not enough to actually form a tailed cloaked. Instead, an aura of blood-red chakra formed around him. Kurabi blinked. Yo wait? Is that what I think it is? He asked his Biju. I don't know, Bai. That chakra feels like a Biju's, but it's mixed with something else. I can't really tell. The Hachibi responded. Naruto grinned, as he raised a single-clawed gauntlet. Brisnker! Fire! He shouted. A ball of black flames erupted from the gauntlet, and shot at Kurabi. The Hachibi Jinchuriki jumped out of the way, and landed on the side of a building. You'll have to be faster than that to beat me, he shouted, as lightning began to form around his swords. He launched himself at the black-armored figure. Their blades met, and sparks flew, as they strained against each other. Naruto growled, as he tried to overpower Kurabi. He knew his sword was better forged, and it showed, as his blades slowly began to slice through Kurabi's, despite the lightning chakra reinforcing it. The Kumo shinobi saw this too, and growled. He tried to push back, but this just increased the amount of damage the sword he was blocking with was taking. His eyes widened slightly, before he fell back, and kicked up. Naruto, caught off guard by this move, was sent flying into the air, over Kurabi's head. At the same time, a large, muscled arm, that was surrounded in lighting chakra, came flying out of nowhere, and punched Naruto in the gut. The famed demon dragon rider was sent flying, crashing through a few buildings. Kurabi slowly stood up, helped by his older brother. Thanks, bro. He was more than simply show. Right. He must be pretty tough, if you're having trouble handling him, the Raikage said. Kurabi was about to respond, when there came a massive roaring sound. They both turned, in time for A to get slammed by a massive blast of wind, which sent him crashing through the buildings behind him. Kurabi was spun by the edge of the wind, and he fell to one knee. He looked up, in time to see the black-armored figure heading towards them. He felt sweat form on his body, as he saw those glowing red eyes through the slits in the helmet. You really think one little blow will finish me? He asked, as he advanced on Kurabi. Kurabi cursed to himself, as more tails formed. But Naruto growled. I'm tired of this, he said, as he locked gazes with Kurabi. Kurabi was about to attack, when he felt a sharp pain in his mind. He fell to the ground, clutching his head. What was that? Naruto kept his gaze locked. That would be me, he said, as suddenly the two of them were drawn into blackness. Inside Kurabi's mind, Kurabi found himself before the cave that the Hachibi inhabited within his mind. He looked around. How did I get here? Ask him, came a rumbling voice in the cave, as the bull head of the Hachibi emerged. Kurabi turned, and backed up, as the black armored figure stood before him. Quite an interesting place, he said, looking around, before looking at Kurabi and Hachibi. But I don't have time for chat. I'm going to lay it to you straight. Kumo owes me for killing 2 of Akatsuki members, who were on their way to kidnap Yugito ni and extract the Nibi from her. So to pay off the debt your village owes me, you're going to tell your brother this. Kumo must withdraw from the war. Tell your brother he has 48 hours to decide. If he decides to continue this war, remind him I could have easily just started burning his village from the sky, and killed many of his civilians and shinobi instead of focusing on merely disabling the village. With that, the black armored figure began to fade away. One last thing, if your village does ally with Konoha, seek me out. I think I can help you with both the durability of your swords and your wrapping. With that, he disappeared. Real world only a second had passed. I had pulled himself from the rubble, and was about to attack, when the black helmet looked at him. That is enough. I'm done here. When he is coherent enough, your brother has a message from me. He turned, and began to walk away. Hey! Don't think you can just walk away! I shouted, as he charged at the retreating figure's back. Naruto turned, ready to fight, as the Raikage launched a punch at him, but lightning shot from his fist, straight at Naruto. The demon dragon rider blocked with his sword, but gritted his teeth, as some of the volts still transferred to him. He swung his sword, roaring out, Atra Kikva Floga! Let lightning fly! He shouted, as he swung the sword, and the lightning shot back at the Raikage. The leader of Kumo quickly countered with a new jutsu. Lightning style, lightning armor jutsu! He showed as lightning erupted from his body, and absorbed the lightning sent back at him. He prepared to rush forward, now protected by his lightning armor. But he was stopped short by the massive wall of flames that erupted between the two. Anxia landed, growling at as Naruto climbed onto her saddle. I'll expect a response to my offer in 48 hours, he shouted, as Anxia took off into the sky. Roared to the heavens, as he dropped to his knees. Slowly he looked up. Kumo was in flames. Not half an hour ago, all was peaceful and quiet. Then out of nowhere, a single man destroyed almost half the city. He growled, as tears fell from his eyes. He felt a hand on his shoulder, and he looked up, to see Kurabi looking at him grimly. We need to talk, big bro, he said. Chapter 11, Revelation. Kakashi watched the fortress of Ishimori from the shelter of some of the petrified trees. It had been a day and a half since the fortress was taken. The Konoha shinobi had regrouped, and began launching small counter-strikes against the Kumo. Had launched enough attacks to harass the Kumo shinobi and injure them, but not enough to draw all of them out. He gently stretched his left arm, which was still sore from his encounter with the Nibi Jinchuriki. As he did, he saw a hawk fly down towards the fortress from the north. He sighed, as he leaned back. I sure hope this plan worked. About 10 minutes later, there was a massive flurry of activity within the fortress. The gates began to open, and out poured the Kumo shinobi. They quickly turned and headed north with all speed. Kakashi blinked, as he turned, and headed back to the Konoha camp. It was located at the exit from the secret passage out of Ishimori, hidden in a cave that was blocked by some petrified trees that were carved into a type of hidden doorway. He soon arrived, and made his way directly to the center of the small camp. The Kumo shinobi, they're leaving, he said. Guy nodded. We know, my youthful rival. The Hokage received a letter from Kumo earlier. They're withdrawing from the war because Oni laid waste to their defenses, and a number of their shinobi. Hokage-sama is transferring the regular garrison back, and is ordering us to return. Kakashi slowly nodded. So it worked? The plan worked? As they nodded, Kakashi blinked. Does anyone think this is eerily similar to Minato Namikaze's attack on Tetsu Toride? During the Third Shinobi War, one of the major obstacles Konoha had while fighting Iwa was a mighty fortress that stood halfway between the border and Iwa itself. The fortress had walls of 6-foot thick iron, practically impervious to any attack, with chakra repressing seals on every surface, to stop enemy shinobi from using chakra to run up the 50-foot walls. With a garrison of 1,000 shinobi, defensive weapon emplacements, and enough supplies to last for years, it was thought that the fortress would never be conquered by an army under 20,000 strong. Minato Namikaze, using his still new Hiraishin technique and a shadow clone to launch the tri-pronged kunai over the walls, took down the fortress in 20 minutes. They all blinked. "What are you getting at, Kakashi?" Kurenai finally asked. Kakashi blinked, then shook his head. "Nothing," he said, turning away. "We should get going." Konoha Kushina smiled as she left the Hokage's tower. Tsunade had informed her of the success of her companion at Kumo, and that he'd be home the next day. As she stepped into the open, a cloaked figure, wearing an ANBU mask appeared. However, this mask had the kanji for root on it. "Kushina-san, my master requests you come with me," came the emotionless voice. Kushina blinked at his sudden appearance, but growled. You serve Danzō, don't you? I should gut you, and then him," she said, as she reached for her sword. "That would be unwise, as Danzō has information concerning your daughter," he replied, watching Kushina tense. She stiffened before growling. "What does he know about my daughter? She disappeared 19 years ago. How could he know about her?" The root agent just stood there. "Will you come with me?" he asked simply, turning and heading off. Kushina took a breath. Before following that, he led her to a deserted training ground, and immediately moved into the shadows. From another part, Danzō slowly limped out. "Kushina Uzumaki," he said. "Namikaze," she corrected, growling. "Now what is this bullshit about you knowing about my daughter? Because if you're wasting my time, I'll kill you now." Danzō smirked. "Your threats are pointless, Kushina-san. Though I am intrigued to know what happened to you. I need to know if she truly knows it was me who ordered her kidnapping." Kushina crossed her arms. "None of your business. Now, what's the info, or do I remove your remaining limbs at work?" Danzō simply pulled out a file. "On the day your daughter was kidnapped, Orochimaru left on a mission to Northern Fire Country. Around that time, a local orphanage found a 1-year-old girl on their doorstep. He handed her a file. She opened it, revealing paperwork from the orphanage," Danzō continued. "4 years later, she runs away with the flute she had stolen. She's never seen again. Around the same time, Orochimaru leaves Konoha. Now at the time of the Oto/Suna invasion, some 9 years later, a girl who matches the description and age range of your daughter is found assisting Orochimaru's attack on the Sandaime. Afterwards, this female joined the abduction of Sasuke Uchiha. She was reported killed at the hands of Shikamaru Nara and Temari no Sabaku. Her body is never recovered." Kushina looked over all the info. "So, that's it? You called me out here to give me this information?" she asked, as she snapped the file closed and looked up angrily at him. She stiffened at the smirk on his face. "Of course not. I'm here to tell you where your daughter can be found, and how you can get her back," he said as he turned and walked a short distance away. "Your daughter, Tayuya, ended up in the care of a civilian healer. For the past 6 years, she's been living in a town in Northern Fire Country, until I sent my root agents to bring her here to Konoha." Kushina growled as her sword came out. "Where is she?" Danzō smirked. "Threatening me won't work. Only I know where your daughter is, and only I am capable of giving said information. So killing me will end up getting you nowhere. And if you think of turning me over to Tsunade, your daughter will end up dying a slow and painful death." Kushina held her katana, before sighing as she relaxed. "Fine, what is it you want?" she asked. Danzō turned to him. "Simple. I want the demon dragon rider to aid me. He will help me take control of Konoha, so I can better further my aim to protect Konoha, as I see fit. And you will help me by getting the dragon rider to side with me." Kushina felt herself torn inside. She could never betray her son. But her daughter, her little girl, now all grown up, was on the line. She needed to turn this to her favor. "I want to see her first. You want me to agree to this? You bring Tayuya here tomorrow night, and show me. Then I'll agree to help you, or not." Danzō blinked and growled. "Do you really think you are in a position to bargain?" Kushina crossed her arms. "I think I am. What's to stop me from secretly telling my companion what has happened here? He could easily find you, rip the info he wanted from your head, and rescue her, before killing you. Now, do we have an agreement?" she asked coolly. Danzō glared at her, before holding out his good hand. Deal. Kushina took it, and yanked him close, whispering into his ear. If she's hurt in any way, you'll have more than my vengeance for having me kidnapped to worry about. With that, she turned and left. Danzō turned. It matters not, Kushina. You'll help me, whether you like it or not. He headed off. The next morning Anxia landed outside the Hokage's tower, and Naruto slipped off. He sighed, as he stretched, before walking in. The armor was definitely a plus in keeping him alive, but it wasn't something you'd want to fall asleep in. He soon reached the Hokage's office, and entered. Tsunade and Kushina were both there, waiting. Hokage-sama, he said in his distorted voice. Oni, you did an incredible job out there. Kumo has already announced its withdrawal from the war. Our northern defenses are secure, for the moment, Tsunade said, smiling. Oni bowed his head. Shall I give a report, or do you not need one? Tsunade shook her head. No. It's pretty cut and dry, as long as you didn't cause any civilian casualties. And since the Raikage didn't report any, you're fine. Oni nodded and left, Kushina right behind him. As soon as they exited the tower, Kushina leaned close. We need to talk, something important has come up. Naruto nodded. Right. As soon as they got into the Namake's estate, Naruto took off his helmet, while Anxia slid her head in through a window to listen to the conversation. Kushina sighed as she sat down. Last night, Danzō came to me. He said that he had info on Tayuya. She said hesitantly. Naruto stiffened. He didn't speak for several moments, before finally asking. What did he say? He said he'd return her to me, if I helped him get you to work for him. She sat down. I told him I wanted to see her first. Naruto growled. The fucking audacity. He actually has the nerve to dangle her in front of you, that sick fuck. Kushina nodded. Especially since he's doing all this under the misguided idea that only he can properly protect Konoha. Naruto growled more. He's either a major bullshitter, or insane. So when do you meet him, to see Tayuya? She stood up, and walked over to the window where Anxia was. She gently stroked the dragon's snout, sighing. Tonight, at Training Ground 2. You going to get there ahead of time? Naruto nodded, as he moved next to her. Yes. And I'm going to get the info on Danzō's secret headquarters. Kushina nodded. Just be careful. I could sense several root agents in the trees around us last night. He nodded. Agreed. Anxia, can you be close by to offer support? Anxia smirked. Gladly. Can I maybe capture and eat one of the root agents? She asked innocently. Naruto chuckled, and shook his head. Not unless a fight breaks out, he said, smiling. Anxia seemed to pout, until Naruto promised to get her a full cow afterwards. At that, the black dragon grinned, and licked her lips, before licking him. They all laughed happily. Elsewhere, in one of the training grounds, Hinata slowly and gracefully spun, training in a kata with her mother's swords. The famed blue demon stopped, and yawned. Lately, her nights had been plagued with the same nightmares. It had caused her to wake up numerous times in the night, and then have problems going back to sleep. She growled softly, as she remembered that these nightmares didn't start till after he came. He's probably doing something to me. I need to get at him, but how? She shook her head, and went back to training, her movements like a graceful dance. Training ground. That night Kushina stood in the training ground, waiting. Somewhere nearby, Naruto lay in wait for the opportunity to gather information from Danzō, or one of his lackeys. She heard movement nearby, and turned to her right, where she saw Danzō coming from the trees. Behind him came two of his root agents, who were supporting a figure between them. The figure appeared to be female, with somewhat baggy and torn clothing, and a black bag over their head. Kushina immediately saw that the figure's legs weren't working. What's wrong with her legs? She demanded, stepping forward. Danzō sighed. Her back was crippled during her battle with the Nara and Suna kunoichi. The civilian who found her couldn't heal her fully. And after my own medic's examination, it would seem that healing her would require a medic of Tsunade's quality to even have a remote chance of successfully healing such long-term damage. Kushina growled. How do I know this is her? You could have anyone under the bag, and under a hench. Danzō snapped his fingers, and the bag was removed, revealing a gagged redhead. Her eyes, blurry with sedatives, slowly looked up, revealing brown through her red bangs. Kushina felt her heart clench, as the young woman she saw before her was replaced with the little 1-year-old who had clapped and smiled at her when she held her in arms. She shook her head and looked at Danzō. "And how do I know it's not a hench?" she asked, stepping forward. Danzō smirked as he rapped his cane against Tayuya's shin. The blow was strong enough that it would dispel a normal hench. In this case, nothing happened, other than Tayuya's leg being moved by the blow. Kushina growled in anger. "Bastard!" she said. Danzō simply smirked more. "You asked and I showed. This is your daughter, Kushina-san. So, do we have a deal then? You'll help me get the demon dragon rider on my side, and I'll give you your precious daughter back. I'll even let you have a chance to let Tsunade heal her, before I make my move." Kushina growled, before hanging her head in defeat. "Fine," she whispered. Danzō sighed. "And this is why emotions are the bane of ninja. See how easy it was for me to gain power over you. Pathetic," he spat out as he turned. "I'll have one of my agents visit once per week to get reports on your progress," he said, as he left, followed by his agents. Kushina waited for a few moments, till she had a small bird call. Then she smirked, as Naruto appeared in his black clothing. "Well, I ripped the info I needed from one of the higher-ranking root shinobi around here, before modifying his mind. From what I got, Danzō's headquarters are under Konoha itself. But I couldn't get any info on Tayuya, other than she is kept somewhere in there." He sighed softly, as he looked at the direction they went in. "I could send a clone to infiltrate, but it would cause too many problems if Danzō found out." Kushina nodded. "I know, don't worry. Danzō won't get away with this," she said softly. Naruto smiled grimly. "We best get out of here." He turned towards the sky, and soon Anxia landed near them. "Come, it's a beautiful night for flying," she said with a smile. They both got onto her back, and she took off into the sky. The next day Tsunade sighed, as she sat down at her desk. The tide was starting to turn in Konoha and Tsunade's favor. With Kumo out of the picture, Konoha could focus more shinobi along the borders of Oto and Iwa, and Kiri, hearing of the demon dragon rider's attack on Kumo, had quickly ended diplomatic communications with Iwa and Kumo. She opened a bottle of sake, and was about to drink, when Shizen rushed in. "Tsunade-sama! A message from the Fire Daimyo! He's coming to Konoha!" Tsunade stood up. "What?" Shizen nodded. "Yes. He said that he wishes to honor the brave warrior who fought against Kumo's might, and prevailed. He said that the message was sent shortly before he left. He'll be here in 2 days' time." Tsunade immediately sprang into action. "Call the council together, to inform them of this. Have Oni come to my office as quickly as possible. Order the word to be spread, for the village to make ready for the daimyo's arrival. Go!" She turned back to her desk, shaking slightly. The last time the daimyo came, it was shortly after her announcement of Naruto's death. He had admonished the entire village, for their brutality towards Naruto, their inability to honor their greatest leader's last wish, and their stupidity in not realizing the truth about Naruto. She sat down. "Well, this should be interesting," she said before downing the entire bottle of sake. 3 days later, the Chunin exam arena was packed from wall to wall with the citizens and shinobi of Konoha. They were all present for the honoring of the demon dragon rider, by the daimyo of the land of fire. In the center of the arena, the daimyo stood with 4 samurai guards. Each had decorated armor, a katana, wakizashi, and naginata. The daimyo himself stood tall, wearing ceremonial armor, and a katana and wakizashi as well. He was an impressive figure, well built, with a trimmed beard and mustache, and long hair that was tied in a ceremonial top knot. Near him stood Tsunade, who was simply there as part of the recognition of the service done by the demon dragon rider. The daimyo turned slightly, and nodded to Tsunade, who stood forward. "People of Konoha, we're here this day, to honor the service of the demon dragon rider, who served Konoha above and beyond the call of duty. He single-handedly removed the threat of Kumo, and ensured that they would not rise against us again, in this war." There was applause and cheers from most of the crowd, though it was mostly polite. In truth, most of the people still feared the armored figure greatly. Amidst the applause, Oni stepped through the entrance to the arena, and proceeded towards the daimyo and Tsunade. He stopped in front of them, and bowed. The daimyo smiled, and nodded his head. "I've been told you prefer to simply be called Oni. Is this correct?" The armored figure nodded. "Yes, Daimyo Dano. That is correct." The daimyo nodded. "Oni then." In recognition of your service to Konoha and Fire Country, I hereby award you the Amulet of Fire. This is the highest award that can be given to shinobi, samurai, or civilian within the borders of Fire Country. An ANBU appeared and opened the box he was holding to the Daimyo. The Daimyo pulled out a golden amulet shaped like a burst of flame that hung on red silk. The Daimyo turned towards Oni. Please, remove your helmet, so we may all honor you. Oni stiffened, looking at Tsunade, who had stiffened but made no move to stop the Daimyo. Oni sighed softly. Regrettably. I must decline, Daimyo Dano. I cannot remove my helmet, as my true identity is precious to me, and I won't trust anyone here with it. Immediately, the entire crowd began to talk, amazed, some of the older members scandalized at this. This was a major sign of disrespect, to refuse to reveal oneself to the highest authority in the entire country. The Daimyo stiffened, and was about to say something, when one of the guards moved forward. Insolent peasant! How dare you dishonor Daimyo-sama? I shall remove your head for this! He shouted, as he readied his naginata. Oni immediately stepped back. Daimyo Dano, I do not mean disrespect, I merely wish to keep my identity a secret to the people of this village. The Daimyo raised a hand, and his samurai guard relaxed a bit. I understand your concern, Oni. But you have dishonored me, even if unintentionally. However, I cannot simply have you killed, as you are a hero, and your skills are much needed. But my honor does need to be answered to, and that of my guard. As such, I'm afraid you must duel him. Not to the death, but until one of you yields. Oni blinked before sighing. I understand, Daimyo Dano, and accept this. Allow me to get my weapons, and I shall duel. He turned back to the entrance, and soon returned with his sheathed sword at his side, and his tear-dropped shield on his left arm. Tsunade, the ANBU, the Daimyo, and the 3 other samurai all moved back. As the samurai who had shouted at Oni moved forward, holding his naginata at the ready, Oni drew his sword, and held it low at his side, pointing out and towards the ground. He presented his shield, showing the curled dragon, with its tail down towards the point, the head curled back at the curve, and the silver flames erupting from its mouth. The two of them stared at each other, and then, on some unknown command, they charged. The samurai spun his naginata, swinging it down at Oni. He raised his shield to block, and swung under it. The samurai blocked with the shaft of his weapon, and whirled, swinging the weapon, and jabbing the butt end at Oni. He parried it to one side, and shoved with his shield, knocking the samurai back. The samurai stumbled back, regained his footing, and spun his weapon, so it was pointing down. He blinked at Oni, who simply resumed his previous stance. He growled before advancing, spinning the naginata around him, before giving a very fast slash at Oni's side. The demon dragon rider blocked, and counter-slashed, scoring a slashing mark on the samurai's breastplate. He backed up, holding his hand to his breastplate, and then glaring at Oni. Oni raised the hand with his sword, and made a come-and-get-me gesture. The samurai roared his challenge as he charged, and continued his onslaught, spinning, stabbing, slashing, and jabbing. Oni blocked and parried with shield and sword, but was slowly being driven back. His chainmail armor restricted his movements to a degree, making it harder to move. This became evident when one slash got through. The naginata slashed his tabard, and grated against the chainmail, but didn't damage it in any way. Oni used that moment for a stronger shield bash, which knocked the samurai onto his back. He inspected his chest, and looked up, as the samurai got to his knees. He charged, and slashed downward. The samurai raised his naginata in defense, but the sword cleaved right through it, and Naruto kicked him onto his back. The 3 claws dug 3 gouges into the chest plate, but not deep enough to even wound. The samurai rolled to his feet, drawing his katana in time to block another side slash. The katana went for a rapid slash at Oni's neck, only for the armored warrior to lean back away from it. He spun under the slash, and stabbed at the samurai, who leapt back. Oni followed, swinging his sword up around his head, and slashing from high right down to low left. The samurai blocked, but the force of the blow against his katana sent him staggering. He stumbled back, and then jumped to the side, to avoid a downward slash. He used the moment to slash at Oni's now open left biceps. The katana got some purchase on the chainmail there, and cut the links a bit, digging in. Naruto immediately swung his shield, knocking the samurai away. He followed with a spinning slash, which the samurai ducked under, and swung at his unprotected back. Naruto rolled forward, turning and blocking a downward slash with his own sword. He rose up, knocking the sword aside, and swinging his shield so the side of it caught the side of the samurai's head. Then he jumped and drove both feet into his chest in a missile kick. The samurai was blown back, and crashed to the ground, out of breath and disoriented from the blows to the head and chest. By the time he gathered his wits, he found the blade of Oni's sword at his neck. "Do you yield?" he asked simply. The samurai looked up at him, before laying back. "Yes." Oni sheathed his sword, and offered the samurai a hand. The samurai took it, and got up with Oni's help. "You're an excellent fighter," Oni commented. The samurai mutely nodded, and turned, bowing before the daimyo, who had come back out, along with his other guards, and Tsunade. "Forgive me. I have failed you," he said. The daimyo placed a comforting hand on the warrior's head. "It is all right. You gave your all, and I am satisfied with that." He looked at Oni, who bowed his head. "Oni, I see now your reputation is more than earned. Although I am now curious as to why you refuse to reveal yourself to anyone." Oni stiffened slightly, before relaxing. "If it would please you, perhaps I could tell you why, in a secured area? You may have your guards with you, but no person of Konoha can be. And they must swear not to breathe one word of what I say." The daimyo blinked and nodded. "So be it. Tsunade-san, may we have the services of one of your secured rooms, and the promise that no one will listen?" Tsunade was torn at this. On the one hand, she was reluctant to give up this chance, and to let the daimyo be protected by only his guards. On the other hand, she couldn't refuse his request. She nodded. "Of course. However, I would like to station a pair of jounin outside the room, just to be safe." The daimyo and Oni nodded. "Very well. Shall we?" he asked Oni. Half an hour later, the daimyo, Oni, and the 4 samurai were in a secured meeting room. Outside, Kakashi, Hatake, and Hinata Hyuga stood guard. Inside the room, Oni looked at the daimyo. "I'm sorry about the trouble I caused, Daimyo Dano. But the truth is, if anyone knew of my identity, it would cause major problems for me, and those close to me." The daimyo nodded. "I understand. And you have my word that no one will learn your identity from me, or those with me in this room." Oni nodded, as he reached up and undid the strap of his helmet. He slowly gripped it, preparing to lift it off his head. Hinata Hyuga fumed silently outside the room. Inside was the source of her irritation of late. Now he was revealing his true identity, and she couldn't find out who he was. Or could she? She glanced at Kakashi, who was looking down the hall. It would only be for a moment. And it is the daimyo in there. He might need protection. She silently activated her Byakugan. At the angle was standing from Kakashi, he wouldn't be able to see the bulging veins, or changes in her eyes unless he asked her to look at him. She smirked behind her mask, as she saw Oni reach for his helmet, and slowly began to lift it off his head. Her smirk stopped, as soon as she saw something she was never expecting to see again. Something she only saw in her dreams. Her Byakugan deactivated immediately, as she felt ice flow through her body. She stood there, unable to comprehend what she had seen. Kakashi looked over at her, and noticed how rigid she was. "Hinata? You okay?" She answered automatically. "I'm fine." Her voice sounded robotic, but Kakashi simply put it down as part of her current mood. Hinata simply stood there, as a rush of thoughts and emotions rushed through her. Anger, fear, confusion, unbelievable joy, and above all, love. I don't believe it. Naruto. About a half hour later, the daimyo, his guards, and Oni exited the room. The daimyo nodded to Kakashi and Hinata, and then shook Oni's hand. "I understand now. Thank you for trusting me with this information. Here is your reward, wear it with pride," he said, handing Oni the amulet. Oni took it and bowed. "You do me much honor, Daimyo Dano." "Thank you." With that, the daimyo left to see Tsunade, his guards following him. Naruto simply nodded at Kakashi and Hinata, and left. Kakashi sighed. "Well, that ends that," he said as he walked off. Hinata didn't move a muscle, as she stood there, watching the armored figure down the hall, until it disappeared. Slowly, she began to walk, her mind not even bothering with where her body was going. "Naruto, you're alive," she whispered. In a town to the south of Konoha, Jiraiya, the great toad Sannin, and author of the Ika series, stumbled into his hotel room, shit-faced beyond belief. It had become a ritual of his. He would contact his spy network, maybe half-heartedly peep on some women, and then spend the rest of the day getting drunk and crashing into the bed of whatever hotel room he was staying in, his eyes closed, as he let his drunken stupor take over and guide him into unconsciousness. But tonight wouldn't be a simple dreamless sleep. Jiraiya's dream. Jiraiya found himself locked in a fight against someone he never expected to fight. Someone he never wanted to fight. The yondaime. Minato. What's going on? He asked, blocking a kunai strike from Minato. The blonde Hokage simply growled. Don't you act surprised, sensei. You abandoned my son. Your godson. The yellow flash roared as he slammed a Rasengan at Jiraiya. The toad sage leapt away. Minato, you don't understand. He would have never been safe on the road with me. I wanted to stay and take care of him, but Sarutobi refused, saying my spy network was too valuable to Konoha, and that if I did watch over Naruto, countries who hated you would become suspicious, and might go after Naruto. He pleaded, only to receive a strong punch to the gut, followed by a knee to the face. He was sent flying, only to be grabbed by Minato, and slammed into the ground. You know that's bullshit. Iwa was too weak to attack us after the Third Shinobi War, and Kumo viewed upon me with enough respect not to go after any child of mine. Didn't I tell you that Naruto's main enemies would be inside the village, not out? But that perverted brain of yours couldn't comprehend that, could you? He raised Jiraiya into the air, and made a Rasengan in one hand. I should use this to rip you in half. I'm really tempted, unless you do exactly as I say. Got it? Jiraiya nodded, and Minato grunted. Good. Now you listen to me. You'll return to Konoha. You'll go to my estate, where my wife is. You'll get on your hands and knees before her, and beg for her forgiveness for abandoning our son, when he needed you most. If she accepts, then maybe you'll get a chance to redeem yourself in my eyes at least. Do you understand? Jiraiya nodded. I understand. I will, Minato. I'll do anything to make up for what I did. Minato lowered him to the ground. Good. Remember, old man. Or else the Shinigami will take pity on you, after I'm through with you. With that, he delivered one more punch to Jiraiya, knocking the toad sage on his ass. Before he left, real-world Jiraiya's eyes shot open. He gasped for air, as he shot up, and then began to gag. He rushed into the bathroom, throwing up into the toilet. When he finished, he gasped for air, as he lay there. Slowly, he looked up at the ceiling, as if looking to the heavens. I will. Minato. I will earn your trust back and Kushina's as well, he whispered before rushing to back. He had a long journey ahead of himself. Oh, make. This is an idea given to me by Sashu. Enjoy. The two of them stared at each other, and then, for no reason, the samurai asked Oni a question. What's your real name? Oni blinked. What? Your real name? What is it? The samurai asked again. Naruto blinked. My name is bitch slapped Seiswat. The samurai blinked. What? Naruto suddenly appeared, bitch slapping the samurai with his shield. Bitch slapped. The entire crowd face planted, with massive anime-style sweat drops on their heads. The samurai stumbled to his feet, as Oni snickered. What was that? He yelled, as Oni got his laughing under control. My name. But seriously. My name is Wheel of Bitch Slaps. He said. The samurai blinked. Wheel of Bitch Slaps? You asked for it. Two clones of Oni appeared on either side of the samurai, and they began to smack the samurai around to each other. Eventually, he fell unconscious, while the three Oni snickered. That's why you don't ask for my name, the real one said, as he walked off. In the crowd, Kiba started laughing. I just got it. Excellent man. He was punched into the ground by Ino and Sakura. Baka. They both muttered. Chapter 12, Confrontation. Izumo and Kotetsu, two chunin of Konoha, were sitting in the guardhouse of Konoha's main gate. Kotetsu was busy doodling in a pad, while Izumo watched the area for those entering or leaving the village. Have you ever noticed we almost always are either getting things for the Hokage, or sitting at this stupid gate? Is there really nothing else we can do? He asked. Kotetsu shrugged. Hey, it's easy work, he said simply. Izumo sighed, as he sat back down. Yeah, but it's pretty boring. I just wish something interesting would drop down here, right in our lap. At that moment, a rather large toad landed right in front of the gatehouse. Jiraiya jumped off its back, panting. Thanks, he said to the summons, who simply croaked at him, and disappeared. Jiraiya turned to the gatehouse and came over. Jiraiya of the Sannin, reporting my return from my recent spy trip, he said rapidly, so they could log him in. Kotetsu rapidly did so, and Jiraiya was off like a rocket, heading for the Hokage's tower. Tsunade calmly sipped her green tea. Things had recently been looking up. The council had stopped pestering her for more control of Oni. Kumo was out of the war, and was already sending them supplies as reparations for casualties and property loss due to them. But what was making her really happy was she had made some progress in reclaiming the girl she had thought of a daughter. She and Kushina had a pleasant, if still rigid, conversation. As she took another sip, one of her windows practically slammed open, and Jiraiya almost rolled into the room. He stood up straight, and turned wildly to Tsunade, who was growling, having spat tea all over her desk due to surprise. Is there any reason for scaring the shit out of me? She asked angrily, as Jiraiya moved towards the desk. Kushina, is she here? Jiraiya asked, slamming his hands on the desk. Tsunade blinked at this. Yes. I sent a message to you almost 2 weeks ago. She began to clean the tea up. Apparently, she was kidnapped from the hospital shortly after Minato took Naruto to do the sealing. She was sold to an IWA slave camp, where she was then sold to several different owners, until the demon dragon rider rescued her. Now she works with him. Jiraiya looked up out the window, then back at Tsunade. She's alive, oh Kami. I need to apologize to her. He turned to leave, but was stopped by Tsunade. For now, you should report any findings to me. Otherwise, I'll have to wait till you're out of the hospital from Kushina beating you up. She pulled out a paper and pen to write on, in case she needed to make notes from his report. Jiraiya nodded slowly. Right, IWA and Oto haven't been making any major preparations for advancing their troops, at least none that my spies could find. Akatsuki has gone silent, ever since the loss of Kakuzu and Haiden. I do have some reports of what seems to be some wandering ninjas in a village near the border between Earth and Fire countries, that has been attacking the nearby IWA raiding posts. It might be worth something to look into it, and see what we can uncover to help us. Maybe we could even stop more raiders across our borders. Tsunade nodded. Good work. Thank you, she said, as she smiled at him. It's good to see you back. He smiled softly. Thanks. I can't say the same, but it's nice to see you again. He headed off, to try and talk to Kushina. Meanwhile, Hinata sat in the middle of her room. It had been 3 days since she learned of the true identity of the demon dragon rider. 3 days of confused thoughts and emotions, waging an internal war within her. He's alive. But how is he Oni? And why didn't he come back if he was alive? He could have at least let his friends know he was all right. That fucking prick. She shuddered at that, and tried to calm her anger. He must have had a good reason. I'm sure of it. But now that I know, do I confront him about it? Or do I wait, and see if he reveals himself? She slowly stood, and moved to her closest. After Naruto's death, and her mental transformation, Hinata had taken anything and everything related to Naruto, and hidden it away in the very back of her closest. She didn't want any distractions, or reminders of her past life. Now, her past life had returned. She slowly pulled out a photo taken of the Team 8 Genin, and Naruto. Shino was looking stoic, Kiba was grinning as he held Akamaru, and she was blushing, ready to faint, while Naruto had an arm around her. He had insisted on being next to the one who had saved them, and kicked major ass while doing it. She gently touched Naruto's image, and her old self. Her eyes showed shyness, fear, and happiness. But there was also fear and a low level of confidence in those eyes. She slowly looked up, and caught her reflection in a mirror. Her eyes were hard. You could see the storm of emotions, but it was all behind a hard, cold exterior. She looked back down at the picture. I've changed so much since then, but was it for good, or bad? I'm strong now, but was it worth losing who I used to be? She gently touched the picture again. There's only one way to find out. She put the picture away, and stood up. First chance I get. I'm talking to Naruto. Namake's estate. In the back of the Namake's estate, the clash of steel against steel could be heard. Kushina and Naruto were locked in a sword spar that would make most people believe that they hated each other. In truth, both of them were trying to push each other's limits. Kushina leaned back from a horizontal slash, and responded with a low slash of her own. Naruto leapt over it, flipping and striking at Kushina's head. She blocked and spun, slashing down, only to be blocked by Naruto's vendor. The two kept at it for several minutes, watched by Anxia, who rumbled in awe and approval as she watched. Eventually, they stopped, and grinned, panting at each other. "Now that is what I call a workout," Kushina said, flicking a few drops of sweat from her sword and then spinning it, sheathing it into its scabbard. Naruto chuckled, as he sheathed his sword onto his back, and drank from a water bottle. "Yeah. You're almost as good as my sensei, Eragon. That guy really knew how to fight." Kushina smiled softly. "I'd really like to have met him. He turned you into an amazing person." Naruto chuckled, then both he and Kushina stiffened, as they heard the deep toll of the bell at the gate, signaling someone was at the gate. Naruto sighed, as he made sure both his face mask and hood were on, since he was wearing his regular clothing, and not his armor. Kushina checked, before heading to the gate. She opened it enough to look outside, and her questioning gaze immediately hardened at the sight of Jiraiya in front of her. Jiraiya turned at the sound of the gate opening, and his eyes widened. It's true, you're alive," he whispered. Kushina stepped out, looking at him coldly. "Yeah, I am," she said. "What do you want?" She crossed her arms in annoyance, and Jiraiya winced. This may seem crazy, but Minato came to me in a dream, and after beating the shit out of me, told me to come here." He suddenly dropped to his knees, and then to his hands. "I'm sorry, Kushina. I failed you. I failed Minato, and I failed Naruto. I am sorry," he sobbed out, as he remained on his hands and knees, head bowed. "I know I don't deserve any forgiveness, and I won't ask for any. But please, know I had no ill intent towards your son. I should have trained him and raised him. I'm sorry that I failed you and Minato." Kushina stood there, glaring at Jiraiya. She was about to speak, when a hand on her shoulder stopped her. She turned, as Naruto leaned close to her ear. "Mom, I know you may think he just abandoned me, but he couldn't just abandon Konoha, and in the end, he did begin training me," he whispered. "I say we give him a chance to prove himself." Kushina growled, but finally grudgingly nodded. "Fine." She crouched down. "Jiraiya, you were given the job of being Naruto's godfather. It was you who should have first cared for him. Failing that, you should have ensured that he was taken in by mine and Minato's friends. Again, you failed that, but unlike those who should have cared for him, you did return, and you did begin to train and watch over him. So, I will give you a chance, like I am with Tsunade. If you can prove to me that you truly mean what you are saying, then maybe you can earn my forgiveness, as well as Minato and Naruto's." Jiraiya slowly looked up. Really? You mean it?" At Kushina's nod, he shot up, tears falling from his face. Thank you. I'll prove worthy of your forgiveness. I swear it." Kushina waved her hand. "Just go for now. It's too soon," she muttered, as she turned away. Naruto gave a glance to Jiraiya, then sighed, and followed his mom back in, the gate locking behind them. Kushina leaned against the wall of the estate, shaking slightly. Naruto hugged her. "It's okay," he whispered softly. She nodded, and took a deep breath. "I'm okay. It's hard," she said softly. "Minato and I thought we could count on so many people. In the end, we couldn't rely on any of them." He hugged her again. "It's okay, Mom, they aren't entirely to blame, the Sandaime was," he said. "He should have had the balls to let my true name and identity out. Then almost all of Konoha would have rallied to support me, and I would have been protected enough to train and become strong." She leaned against him. "Yeah, you're right," she sighed softly. "Anyways, enough about all this. We have more training to do." He grinned. "Excellent. Let's get to it." They both laughed, as they headed back to their training. Hokage Tower. 2 days later, Tsunade looked up at the group assembled before her. "I'm sending you all on a recon mission towards a village that has been suffering attacks from IWA raiders. I need you all to establish contact with some ninjas in the area who have been attacking the raiders, and see if you can't convince them to join the village, or gather info from them. It's only 3 miles from our current defense line in the area, so you should be able to get reinforcements, or report back to Konoha, with minimum problems." Before her stood Hinata Hyuga, Rock Lee, Kakashi Hatake, and Oni. Oni was decked in full armor, which was how he normally appeared to the majority of Konoha. "Excuse me, Hokage-sama, but why am I here? This seems more like a observe and report mission, and my specialty is attack, assault, and defense. The armored figure said, arms crossed. Tsunade entwined her fingers together and rested her head on the connected hands. Normally, you'd be correct. However, I want to have some power, since they'll be close to the border. You'll go with them, but hang back. You'll only engage if required. Understood? Oni nodded. I see, then I'll make sure to be well stocked for boredom. Tsunade blinked and sighed. We only have rumors on the location of these ninjas, so you'll need to snoop around a bit. Kakashi nodded. Right. Any way we can identify them? Tsunade shook her head. No. Sorry. Kakashi sighed. All right, we'll get right on it. Meet at the west gate in half hour. The 3 ninjas and 1 rider disappeared, and Tsunade growled. Arrogant little bastard, she muttered. Meanwhile, Kushina was out shopping for ingredients to her special ramen. She turned down an alleyway, only to turn around, her hand on the katana at her back. You know, I don't like having Danzō's lackeys following me. A rude agent dropped down. It matters little, as Danzō-sama has ordered an agent follow you for status reports. He requests an update on your quest to gather the demon dragon rider's support in his ventures. Kushina rolled her eyes. Well, tell him to be patient. It's not like I can just order him. The rude agent remained motionless. Danzō-sama told me to remind you that your daughter's fate lays in your ability to persuade him. With that, he disappeared. Kushina growled, as she headed back for home. She stopped, seeing Naruto and Anxia preparing to leave. Oni-san! A word! She yelled, running close to him. When will we deal with that bastard Danzō? She whispered. Naruto sighed softly. It's tough. We can't just make a move against him, until we're sure Konoha's forces won't attack us. If we just attack, Konoha will strike back, thinking we're attacking loyal forces of the village. When we make our move, it has to be at a time where we can get concrete evidence to prove Danzō's guilt. Kushina took a deep breath. I know. But being tailed by his ANBU, and knowing Tayuya is so close, and yet so far, it's driving me insane. Naruto placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. It won't be long now. He turned, and got up into Anxia's saddle. I'll look into this matter when I return, Kushina-san, he said, as Anxia took off. Kushina smiled, and headed inside. She grinned, as she arrived in one room. The walls were a soft rose pink. It was clear this room had been cleaned recently, with new furniture moved in. She grinned softly. Soon, Tayuya-chan, you'll be back home, she said, as she picked up a picture of her, Minato, and little baby Tayuya. Next to it was a picture of her, Naruto, and Anxia. At the gate, the others waited patiently. Well, except for Lee, who was jogging in place. YOSH! I can't wait to begin our most youthful journey! Hinata would have normally yelled or glared at Lee, but her eyes were unfocused, staring into the middle distance. Her thoughts were revolving around their other companion. Kakashi noticed this, and moved towards her. Hinata, you okay? She blinked, and looked at him. I'm fine, Kakashi, she said, pulling her lower face mask up, and checking her headband. Kakashi was about to question that, when there was a roar, and Anxia flew over, with Oni waving from her back. Kakashi nodded to the others, and they raced off, taking to the trees to keep up. Itachi paced his room restlessly, before dropping onto his bed. All his plans had begun to unravel so many years ago. He had tried to protect Sasuke from Madara by trying to make him strong, only for it to trigger a dark side of Sasuke that would seek power at any cost. Now Sasuke was roaming the elemental nations, and Itachi knew of a greater threat to Sasuke that was beginning to loom. Ever since the Kyuubi's disappearance, Itachi's mentor, and the true leader of Akatsuki, had begun to move out of the shadows. The Akatsuki's plan had been put on hold by the reported death of Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But it wasn't completely halted, as the Kyuubi would reform in about 10 years. It was the way of all the Biju. If their host died, and took their Biju with them, the Biju would reform in a certain amount of time. How long depended on the number of tails the Biju had, plus 1 year for the initial respawning. Itachi stared at the ceiling. It's been 4 years. 6 more till the Kyuubi returns. And he is now trying to reach Sasuke, since I have become distant to him. Undoubtedly, he'll make us fight. He knows I can't kill Sasuke, so if, or should I say when Sasuke triumphs, he'll feed him some story about how it's all Konoha's fault for what happened to us. He sat up. I have to reach Sasuke first. Make sure he understands the truth behind what happened to our clan. With new resolve, the famed Uchiha killer stood and headed to send a message to his real master. Village in northwest Fire Country. The village of Hadano Grainfield was one of the most fertile farming villages of the Land of Fire, as it had many miles of rich farmland for the growing of vegetables, fruit, and other grains. This was why it was such a prime target for enemies coming from Iwa. The village was well defended, but with all the farmland, several storehouses were outside the city. These were harder to defend, and the primary targets of raiders and bandits, which was the case now. 20 shinobi from Iwa were busy carrying off stores of food from one of the storehouses. They were laughing and joking, as this was some of the easiest work they had ever done. Not too far away, a pair of crimson eyes watched them. They narrowed, as the person who they belonged to moved away, and slid through shadows to another shadowy figure. They're on the road, towards the ambush point. The other figure giggled, and the first one grinned. You ready? The second one nodded. The 20 Iwa raiders entered a stretch of woods. As they continued on, not one of them noticed when the very last one was suddenly yanked up by a noose that had fallen around his neck. As they continued, another swatted at his neck, muttering about bugs. He pulled away, revealing a dart. He blinked, as his vision blurred, and he swayed, before falling over. The rest cursed, as they immediately went on alert. One of them stepped forward, only to catch on a triped wire. This launched a spiked log at the group. Most of them jumped out of the way, but 2 were too slow. Their screams echoed through the woods, as blood spurted everywhere. They swung by on the log, impaled by the spikes. The rest of them growled. Show yourself! One shouted out. Suddenly, a 15-year-old girl with blonde hair and 2 ponytails, and pink eyes, appeared. She was wearing a black sleeveless dress with a pink tie, flared black glove sleeves, black stockings, and boot-like shoes. She giggled, and waved at them, before disappearing down the road. A few of the shinobi, mostly Chunin and pretty reckless, charged after her. One of the jounins noticed that some of the ground ahead of them seemed off, and cursed. Wait! It was too late. The Chunin fell into a pit hidden in the road. Their cries of surprise were abruptly cut short. One of the other shinobi left rushed forward, and stopped, putting a hand to his mouth. The Chunin were impaled on sharpened stakes of wood and stone, that were actually covered in mud, animal corpses, and things too disgusting and horrible to mention. One of the Chunin was struggling weakly, and raised a hand. Help me, please! He whimpered out, blood spurting from his mouth. He coughed, and went limp, his eyes wide but glassy. The jounin cursed, and glared up at the girl, who stood there. She smiled, closing her eyes and tilting her head, before disappearing into the trees. That little bitch! I'll kill her! Shouted another Chunin, who rushed forward, only to be thrown back by a demon windmill shuriken that almost split him in half. A giggle echoed from the trees. There was a cry from behind them, and they whirled, to see a Chunin holding his severed arm. His head suddenly fell off, as a katana flashed between his shoulders and head. Behind the Chunin was a 17-year-old boy with crimson hair and eyes. His skin was pale, but naturally so. He was wearing a white coat with red trim, and a light red scarf over both his shoulders. He had black pants and boots on as well. He immediately jumped back into the trees, followed by a hail of shuriken and kunai. One of the ninjas screamed, as he was grabbed by ninja wire, and yanked back into the trees. His screaming abruptly ended. The ninjas were shaking now, as they formed a new defensive circle. A male voice echoed through the woods. You all have 2 minutes to head back to your base, leaving all you've stolen behind, along with your weapons and supplies. If you don't comply, you'll all be killed. Most of the remaining ninja trembled, but their jounin commander growled. I don't give a rat's ass who you think you are. We're not leaving without our supplies and your heads. The male voice sighed. Then prepare to die, he said simply. There was only silence, then the ground shook slightly, as a pair of roars were heard. Then from each side of the road, the doom of these raiders appeared. From the opposite side, a dragon made of wind roared out, with dark blue eyes. On the other side, a fire dragon roared, its red eyes blazing. The Iwa ninjas prepared to dodge, only to stop as the 2 dragons shot to the sides. Then they began to revolve around the Iwa ninjas. One of the jounin's eyes widened, as the dragon's speed increased, and began to merge together. Shit! Get out! He shouted, as he shushined. Another followed his example, but before the others could, the 2 dragons dispersed, forming a towering tornado of wind and flame, The ninjas trapped inside screamed in fear and agony, as they were roasted alive. Eventually, the fire tornado dispersed, leaving only charred corpses behind. The two remaining ninjas shook in fear, as the male's voice echoed around them. Fire and wind style, firestorm whirlwind. And then there were two. The two ninjas trembled. What are you? One whispered. The male chuckled. Who are we? We are Daiban and Maui, the Sirai no Zie Shinin. Leave, and tell your masters what happened here. The two ninjas, terrified at what they had seen, ran. As soon as they were gone, the guy and girl came out. Daiban grinned. Another raiding party successfully dealt with, huh, Mazai? She giggled, and nodded, as she pulled her demon windmill shuriken from the chunin it was impaled in. She put it away, and hugged Daiban, who grinned more. Come on, sis, let's get these supplies back to the warehouse where they belong. 2 hours later, the stores of food were returned to the warehouse, with no one knowing who had returned them. 2 days later, Kakashi, Hinata, and Lee entered the village of Hada. Because of the village's proximity to the border, they had expected to find it in decay from constant raids. But as they found out, the village was relatively unharmed, as most of the raids were directing on the outlying farmlands and storehouses. Still, there was a tense atmosphere, as the occasional IWA raider came through town. The local militia kept them in line, but were unable to actually fight them, due to the fact that if they did, they would bring down the combined forces of the nearest IWA outposts upon them. And unless they were aided by Konoha, or the daimyo's own samurai, they would be wiped out. Kakashi had ordered Oni and his dragon to set up camp a few miles out of town, in a small valley hidden between two large hills, then begin scouting in the surrounding countryside. The rest of them had done their best to disguise themselves, in case IWA shinobi showed up. Their primary mission was to locate these wandering ninjas, not take on the IWA shinobi. Kakashi looked up from under the straw hat he wore, wearing simple farmer's clothes. He had a regular eye path over his left eye, with dirt covering the scar and other parts of his face. Lee was harder, since he refused to wear anything that wasn't green. So, they had put him in peasant clothes that were green, and added a hunter's cloak and equipment. The hood of his cloak hid his unique hairstyle and eyebrows. Hinata was easier. She was wearing a black, long-haired wig, and contact lenses that tinted her eyes purple. She was wearing a female farmer's outfit. Kakashi had his head bowed, while pulling a cart of grain behind him, as Lee had a few dead rabbits strung on his shoulders, and Hinata carried a bag of vegetables. To anyone who was looking at them, it seemed like a farming family coming in to sell their grain and animals at the market. Hinata had used some dirt to hide the veins that would appear if she used her Byakugan, which she was using now. I don't see any more large chakra signatures nearby. There are no ninjas in the village. Kakashi nodded. Right. I'll work the local pub. Lee, you and Hinata work the market. They nodded, and separated. Meanwhile, Naruto was approaching one of the stretches of woodland that surrounded the village and farms. He had used henge clones to ask around, and a few of the workers had some things to tell. A few times that the supplies had been returned, some of the workers would go out to look for the IWA raiders, or those who had taken back the supplies. They would end up finding signs of ambushes and battles, mostly in the wooded areas. So, Naruto was in one of the wooded areas close to the latest warehouse to be raided. And what he found intrigued him. The area had been covered in traps that had been removed. There were also signs of combat, including a massive burn mark in the center of the road. He approached it, and kneeled. Anxia, can you hear me? Yes. What do you have? The black dragon asked, stretching out in the camp. I've got weapon marks, burn marks, and traps. Looks like some type of major ambush. You think I have our wandering neens? Sounds like it. Anxia said, stretching. Can you find anything else? He mentally shook his head. No. I'll take a look around. Naruto slowly stood, and instantly grabbed one of the long knives in his belt, blocking a shuriken aimed at him. He whirled, locking the blade of his knife with the katana aimed at his neck. His other knife came up and fast, driving the crimson-haired youth that had attacked him. Daiban held his katana at the ready. Who are you? He demanded, ready to fight. Naruto growled softly. Who are you, that you attack travelers on a road? Don't play innocent. A simple traveler wouldn't be examining burn and weapon marks. Now who are? Daiban demanded again. Naruto sensed a presence in the trees behind him. He tensed, ready to dodge. Who I am is not important. All you need to know is I'm not a shinobi if IWA. Daiban remained tense. How do I know you're telling the truth? He said, ready to fight. Naruto smirked, as he felt a familiar presence. Because IWA doesn't have dragons, he said. Daiban gave him a quizzical look until he heard the flapping of large wings. Suddenly, Anxia crashed through the trees, landing and roaring. Daiban's eyes were wide, and there was a feminine squeak of surprise from behind Naruto. The demon dragon rider grinned, as Anxia stood there, ready to attack. So, care to talk now? Base camp. That night Kakashi blinked, as Oni made his report. So, you ran into the ninjas we're looking for, but instead of bringing them here, you let them go. Why? Oni shrugged his armored shoulders. A sign of good faith. I requested that they meet us in the same place tomorrow, so you could talk to them. Lee smiled. YOSH. A most youthful move, as it will show our good intentions, instead of hardening them against us. Kakashi sighed. Okay, you're right. Tomorrow I'll go with you. Hinata and Lee will remain nearby to offer support, if this turns into an ambush. They all nodded, except Hinata, who was staring into the flames of the fire they had started. Kakashi blinked. Do you understand, Hinata? She looked up. Yes. She looked back into the flames before standing. Oni-san. I need to talk to you, alone, she said. Oni blinked before standing. Of course, Hyuga-san, he said. Hinata led him a fair distance from camp. When she stopped, Oni stopped a few feet away. They remained there for a few moments, before she turned back to him. Why don't you remove your helmet? She asked, crossing her arms. He blinked behind his helmet. Why should I? Because it's about time you confessed who you really are. You can't hide forever, she said. He sighed, as he turned away. If this is all you wanted to talk about, you wasted both our time, he said. Am I? Or do you not want to tell me that you're Naruto Uzumaki? Her voice caused him to freeze. He slowly turned, and she nodded. You heard. It's time to stop lying, and to tell me the truth, Naruto. Chapter 13, The Truth of It. All the black armored figures stood there, looking at Hinata, before chuckling. Hyuga-san, I'm afraid you have me confused with someone who, last I checked, was considered dead by Konoha. How could I be him then? Hinata growled. I know it's you under there, because I've seen your face. He stiffened, before his shoulders slumped. Slowly, he lifted his hand and undid his helmet's chin strap, before slowly lifting it up and away from his head, revealing his face. You were one of the guards outside the room when I met with the Daimyo, he said, as he dropped his helmet. She nodded, as she stared into his blue eyes. Yes. I used my Byakugan to watch the meeting. Naruto stood there, growling. So I can't even speak to the leader of Fire Country without being spied upon? He asked, his eyes flashing. Hinata just raised her chin defiantly. Considering you were only a mercenary, and I had no reason to trust you, yes. And I was proven right, she said, all semblance of control gone, as her eyes flashed dangerously. Where the hell have you been? She shouted, her fists clenching in anger. Naruto was taken aback, not expecting such ferocity from Hinata. He knew she had changed, but now was the proof of how much. Do you have any idea what it's like to hear one of your friends is dead? To mourn for them for 4 years, only to find that they've been alive and well, but they didn't see any reason to come home? She screamed. Naruto growled. Come home to what? To an entire village that hated my guts? To being attacked by people who should have raised me? To wondering if this was the day the council finally had me banished or executed? Hinata's eyes narrowed. Not everyone in the village hurt you. Or do you not remember your friends? Naruto snorted softly. I remember people who claimed to be my friends. Of course, half those people put me down, beat me up, or abandoned me when it was the popular thing to do. And the rest didn't do anything to help me. They either cared about their own problems, or... He stopped, but Hinata got the hint. Or were shy, and didn't approach you to offer friendship or aid. Of course, let's not forget that the shy person you're talking about also saved your life, at least 3 times. She said, her arms crossed. Naruto took a deep breath. I'll give you that. Yes, there were people I had that I could have come back to. But in the end, I truly had to question if it was worth it. Hinata growled softly at that. What do you mean? Why wouldn't your friends be worth coming home? Naruto shook his head. You want to know the real reason? You want to know why I didn't return? Hinata nodded. Yeah, I think I've earned that. She snapped. Naruto glared back. No, you haven't. But if it will get you off my back, then I'll tell you, he said, taking a deep breath. Reason number 1. My responsibilities and loyalty are no longer limited to Konoha. Hinata blinked. What do you mean? You're a Konoha shinobi. Why wouldn't you still be loyal? Naruto turned and looked up at the moon. I'll start with what happened to me. As you know, I disappeared during an ambush by Oto ninjas. What Jiraiya didn't know was a hermit found me on the canyon floor and nursed me back to health in secret. While I was there, I found a room with a black stone in it. As it turns out, that stone was an egg. And when I touched it, the being inside, my dragon Anxia, decided I was the perfect person to be her rider. A week later, she hatched, and the hermit, a former rider named Eragon, asked me to stay and learn to be a rider. I agreed, but with every intention of returning to Konoha. He turned back to her. That changed during my training. As Eragon taught me, as I began to learn about the new power I had, I began to realize that my responsibilities couldn't be to just one village. The power I have, in the hands of Konoha, the council would override any decision Tsunade made, and force me to lead Konoha in a conquest of the elemental nations. I would be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, so they could have more land, more wealth, and more power. And that's not what Anxia and I trained for. I am a dragon rider. I am a protector. That's one of the reasons for me not returning to Konoha, because I have a duty and responsibility to protect the balance of this world. And that's what I'm going to do. Hinata's eyes widened before narrowing. So, even if you were going to be some big world protector, you could have come back and resigned, and let us know you were alive. Naruto nodded slowly. I know. That's what brings us to reason number 2. You see, around 2 years ago, Eragon died. On that day, the Kyuubi attempted to take over my body. She failed, obviously. But afterwards I decided it was time to open a scroll I had taken from the Forbidden Scroll of Sealing, one that had my name on it, as well as the Sandame's. What was in said scroll was a letter from my dad to the Sandame, telling him who I was to be raised by, should my mom not be there. One of those who were supposed to be my caretakers was the Hyuga clan. Hinata's eyes went wide, and Naruto nodded. There was also a letter to me, along with a scroll full of my inheritance from my parents, which I was to receive after becoming a genin. Not only did Sarutobi not give me what was rightfully mine, but when I finally did get around to opening it, I discovered something. At least 2 people had already opened the seal on the main scroll, and both also attempted to access the blood seal holding the keys to my family's estate, and the jutsu my father left behind, including the Hiraishin. I've already had the blood analyzed. Even if it was dry, the experts I took it to were able to find out who it was. One was the Sandame Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the other was Fugaku Uchiha, my dad's most bitter rival. Which is funny, since my mom and his wife, Mikoto Uchiha, were actually friends. He looked at her. Now do you see why I had no desire to return to Konoha? My family and I were betrayed by almost the entire village. Whether unknowingly or on purpose, it doesn't matter. My father, my mother, and myself gave our sweat, blood, and lives for Konoha, and the village spat upon all our sacrifices. And no matter how much I love the village, even I have my limit. Hinata blinked. But why would the Sandame betray you? It makes no sense. He always seemed to care for you so much. Naruto chuckled darkly. I've thought about that too. He was such a nice, grandfatherly figure to me, wasn't he? But then, think about this. How is it that I was always so badly beaten in a village that always had shinobi active in it? How is it none of them came to my aid, until the last moment? Simple. They had orders not to interfere. Think about this too. My apartment isn't exactly in a good neighborhood. It's not the worst, but it's still an area filled with not-so-nice people, who would enjoy getting drunk and deciding to give the Kyuubi brats some payback. And it was the Sandame who gave me that apartment. He looked back up. My theory is that the Sandame did it in some weird, twisted belief that it was for my own good. Now that I think about it, he always seemed to be more of a politician than a shinobi leader. He did what he thought was right for Konoha. And that meant making me loyal to the village, while appeasing the council, who undoubtedly wanted me dead either for the Kyuubi or for my family. So, he allowed the villagers and shinobi to beat me, but saved me, making me thankful to him. You see how it works? He asked, looking at her. She slowly nodded. Yes. I do, and if it's true, I really can't blame you then. She took a deep breath to calm her nerves. Naruto tilted his head slightly. So what now? Are you going to be a loyal Konoha shinobi and turn me in? Hinata looked at him, thinking for several seconds. Then she sighed. No. I'm not. The village has fucked you over royally. I won't prove you right even further. Naruto gave her a half smile. That's rather noble of you, he said, as he took a step towards her. She suddenly felt a familiar warmth spread across her, which she did her best to squash. Maybe, but you better prove you're worth it, she said. Naruto smirked. Of course. Now, did I hear you correctly, when you said you loved me? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Her eyes widened before she sighed. Yeah, I did. So what? She asked, turning around. Naruto sighed softly as he looked at her. You know, it took Kyuubi Anxia and 3 years for me to realize that. I talked to them a whole bunch, especially about you. In fact, you, Irika, and the Ichirakas are the only thing I really missed about Konoha. She blushed at this, but only lightly. Naruto continued. Honestly, I'm flattered you thought of me that way. But at the same time, I realize I might be too late to try and develop something with you. I'm not the only one who's changed during these years. Which is why, since you've learned my true identity, I'd like to try and find out more about the new Hinata. She turned. Is that so? And what if I don't want to? She asked. He blinked, feeling stung by those words. That's your choice, Hinata, he said in a guarded voice. She growled softly, looking up. I just don't see the point of friends. I spent so much time worrying about what others thought about me, worrying that I would disappoint my friends and family that I barely even trained. It's why I was so weak. When you died, I realized that if I was going to be strong, I needed to concentrate on training and the missions. And I've been proven right so far. I've never failed a mission, and I'm a jounin, and you get the idea? Naruto slowly nodded. I get the idea. It's because you don't want to get hurt again, by having another person close to you either insult you, get hurt, or get killed. You're hiding your emotions, and keeping people from getting close. Hinata's eyes widened, but Naruto stopped her from talking. I'm not going to force you to change, Hinata, but is life worth living when you have no one to share it with? He turned to leave, but added one last thing. And one last truth here, before I go. I really think that the old Hinata was strong too. In fact, I think she was stronger than you are, he said, as he slid his helmet back on and walked back to camp. Hinata stood there, staring at the space he had been in. She felt such conflicting emotions racing around in her. Anger, confusion, love, fear, sadness, and joy were the strongest. She was one giant blender of emotions. Finally, she shook her head and headed back to camp. Kakashi and Lee gave her questioning glances, but she simply ignored them and looked at Naruto, who was cleaning Anxia's side. She felt that warmth spread across her again, but she squashed it again as she turned and entered her tent. The next day, Kakashi and Oni, with Anxia, were back in the woods where Oni had found Mazai and Daiban. Lee and Hinata were currently back in Hadano, keeping an eye out for IWA shinobi. Oni looked around. This is where they were yesterday. I told them to meet us here, he said. Kakashi simply nodded as he looked around. Eventually, they both looked forward as Daiban appeared through the trees. The crimson-haired youth nodded to them both. Oni-san. Shinobi-san, he said respectfully. Oni inclined his head slightly, while Kakashi nodded back. Kakashi Hataki, Jounin of Konoha. You're Daiban, you sure? Yes? Where's your sister? Daiban shrugged. She's around. I didn't want her getting caught if this went south. Kakashi blinked. Nothing is going to happen. I'm here simply to make contact with you, and deal with the enemies who might be in the area. The crimson-haired sword-wielder nodded, as he sat down on a stump, and indicated for the others to sit wherever. Kakashi looked around, only to see Oni perched on one of Anxia's legs, who huffed happily. He shrugged, and leaned against a tree. Daiban slowly nodded. So, why exactly is Konoha so interested in contacting me and my sister? He asked, shifting his katana to a better angle. Kakashi cleared his throat. Officially, we're here to gather any information you have on IWA forces in the area, as well as attempting to enlist your aid in the war effort. Unofficially, we're here to help you deal with the IWA forces in the area, or at least drive them back further from our borders. Daiban slowly nodded. I get it. Well, there's not much to tell. We mostly get IWA raiders here. Not much on fighting ability, but they're a bit more aggressive and faster than normal shinobi. Since the village only has militia out here to defend them, the village doesn't bother them, unless they bother the town. They have an outpost about 20 miles west, on the earth side of the border. They're about 50 strong, maybe more, maybe less. As for me and my sister, we're going to stay here. These are good people, and we want to defend them. Kakashi blinked, and smiled slightly. I understand. For now, let's deal with IWA. Daiba nodded, but before he could speak, there was a squawk on the radio around Kakashi's neck. He touched it. Go ahead. Kakashi-san, we have a problem. Multiple IWA shinobi have entered the city. They're attacking business and people, demanding they hand over the Sirai no Zie Shinrin. What do we do? Kakashi cursed. Move in and intercept, but be careful. We'll be there soon. I'll send a message to the front lines requesting aid. Lee cut off the connection, and Kakashi quickly summoned a small brown pug dog with a Konoha headband and a blue vest. The pug looked up. Yo Kakashi. What up? He asked. Kakashi sighed. No time to chat, Pakin. I need you to head southeast to the Konoha command post. Inform them we need reinforcements in the village of Hadano. Go. The pug, now known as Pakin, shot off. Kakashi turned, only to see Oni already gone on his dragon, while Daiban and Maui were running towards the village. He sighed, and followed I in the village. It was chaos in the village. IWA shinobi raiders had stormed into town, catching the populace off guard. The men of the militia had quickly tried to gather their armor and weapons, but were being overwhelmed easily. Lee was running along one street of the village, heading to the closest screams and sounds of combat. He rounded a corner, in time to see two IWA shinobi try to break down a door. He charged, and leapt into the air. Leaf whirlwind! He shouted. His spinning kick nailed both, knocking them back. He landed, planting one hand down, and launching another roundhouse kick, nailing them again as they recovered. They both were knocked out, and Lee shot off again. Meanwhile, 3 IWA shinobi were running down one street. One of them stopped, raising a hand, as he saw movement. Wait here. He headed to investigate. He turned down an alleyway, only to see nothing. Shrugging, he turned in time to see both his comrades drop with blood seeping from their mouths. The remaining shinobi recognized the dark blue-clad figure as the scourge of IWA forces. The blue demon. He whispered. She drew her twin-hook swords. His eyes went wide, and he wildly looked around, before grabbing up a long pole. Come on, you bitch! You won't get me! He shouted. She chuckled coldly. We'll see. She whispered, rushing him. He jabbed with his staff, but she knocked it aside with one blade and slashed at him with the other. He blocked, but it bit into the makeshift staff. She yanked, knocking him off balance, as she slashed with the other blade. It caught his arm as he stumbled back. She grinned, as she attacked again, slashing quickly and horizontally. He blocked, but was unprepared for the second slash that knocked the weapon away. Hinata spun, linking the swords at their hook points, and swinging fast as she came around. The crescent blade above the hilt of her left-handed sword slit the IWA shinobi's throat. He stumbled back, holding his neck, before falling to his knees. She turned and moved on, only to stop as there was a roar, and a black dragon flew over. Naruto! She whispered. Naruto landed in the center of the village, leaping off Anxia. Go wild! He told her. She grinned. Gladly! She roared, as she leapt at a group of IWA shinobi. Naruto gripped Vind, rushing off in another direction. 2 IWA shinobi had a man on the ground, beating him, while S spear lay broken nearby. Come on! Tell us where they are! One shouted, as the other kicked the militiaman. Suddenly, from behind them came a voice, saying, Jiraiya! The one doing the kicking suddenly screamed, as his leg snapped so hard, the bones stuck out of the skin. He dropped, as the other turned in time to see a black armored figure smash into him. The two figures fell to the ground. The shinobi tried to get up, only to be pinned down by one hand, as an armored gauntlet, gripping a sword, smashed into his face. The spiked parts on the back of the armored fingers ripped open the man's face, and he was knocked unconscious due to the combination of the force of the blow, of the metal gauntlet and sword hilt, Naruto stood, looking at the man, who was getting up. "Get to cover," he said as he moved on. Kakashi appeared in one street, looking around. He touched one hand to his ear. "Team, report in. This is Lee. I'm in the southeast part of the village. I've run across at least 5 enemy shinobi, all now dispatched. Moving to the north. Hinata. I've dealt with 3 enemy shinobi, and am moving towards 2 more east of my position, near the inns. They have a group of civilians trapped there. Oni here. Northern part of the city is heavy with them. I've got at least 10 or so here. I think they attacked with only a quarter or a third of their garrison." Kakashi nodded. "Drive them out. We'll stalk them back to their outpost, and scout it out." He turned, blocking a kunai aimed at him with a kunai of his own. The IWA shinobi who held it grit his teeth, only to jerk, his eyes widening. He slumped to the ground as Muzai slowly lowered her hand from which she had launched several shuriken. She smiled, and nodded to Kakashi before jumping off with Daiban. Hinata had moved north, after driving the IWA shinobi in the east to the north. She watched a group of 3 shinobi started setting a building on fire. She grinned, as she began running through her hand signs. One of the IWA shinobi grinned, as he pulled out a match. "This will teach these yokels to stand against us." He was about to strike it, when a female voice echoed above them. "Lightning style, divine lightning storm." Hinata yelled, as she held out both hands. Lightning shot out of all 10 of her fingers. 2 of the shinobi were obliterated. The lightning shot through them, not leaving a mark. But inside, it was a different matter. Their organs were fried, their nerves overloaded beyond their ability to cope. Both shinobi fell, as if they were puppets with their strings cut. The 3rd shinobi got away, but Hinata was on him, a chakra-laved palm headed for his head. He twisted, but Hinata's palm nailed his shoulder, obliterating the bone, blood vessels, and chakra pathways there. He screamed in pain, only for a second strike to destroy his throat. He gasped and choked, as he fell to the ground. Lee reached the northern section, in time to see most of the IWA shinobi gathering near the plaza south of the north gate. Kakashi joined him. "How many are left?" "About 10, Lee said. "Hinata-san is coming in on the right, Oni-san on the left. We should be able to drive them out, and maybe capture one." Kakashi nodded, as he touched the radio. "Team, try to capture 1 shinobi for questioning. The rest drive away or take down." Oni nodded, as he arrived in the plaza first. Immediately, the IWA shinobi began to quake. "I.S.M, the demon dragon rider! Fall back!" the leader shouted. The shinobi quickly began to retreat. However, a female chunin at the back of the group was brought down by a pair of kunai in her legs. She screamed out in pain, as she fell. Hinata was on her in a flash, pushing her down. The rest of the raiders cursed, as they ran. Oni quickly looked up to Anxia, who was flying overhead. "Follow them. If you can, torch their outpost. They'll hopefully leave this village alone afterwards." Anxia roared in acknowledgement, as she flew after them. Naruto turned back to where the other 3 were gathered. The kunoichi was trembling, but gave them all a defiant stare. "WL, get it over with," she spat out. "Torture me, or kill me." Kakashi leaned down. "We might be willingly to let you go, if you tell us what we want." She spat at him. "Go to hell," she whispered. Hinata immediately drove a kunai into her arm, and she screamed out. "Then we'll do it my way. How about I slowly remove each of your digits till you talk?" Lee and Kakashi's eyes widened, but before they could do anything, Oni knocked her away. "Enough! There's no need for this," he growled. Hinata glared at him. "We need info from her, and she's not giving in. Besides, what I was going to do is mercy compared to what Ibiki and Enko would do to her," she said. Naruto leaned down, and lifted the woman's hand, showing a ring. He rifled through her pockets, pulling out a wallet, and looking through it. He showed Hinata a picture of the women with 2 little kids. "You think her kids would consider it mercy, to know their mom was brutally slaughtered, instead of simply tortured with the chance of being released? Just because you can kill someone doesn't mean you should," Hinata growled out, "unless you want to make sure that enemy never hurts your comrades again. A good shinobi never leaves an enemy alive." Oni stood up, staring into her eyes. "No, a good shinobi kills only when he has to. A cold-blooded, heartless monster leaves no enemy alive. Which are you?" Her eyes widened, going back to her dream she had shortly after Oni had arrived in Konoha. Seeing the dead body of Naruto say that had been terrifying, but hearing him, alive and well, say those words, horrified her. She trembled ever so slightly. Oni turned back to the kunoichi. You are an IWA kunoichi. But you're also a mother or sister or whatever to those kids. So you owe it to them to come back alive. Now will you cooperate? She trembled for a moment, but shook her head. No. Oni sighed. Fine, forgive me, he said softly, as he put his hand over her head. He closed his eyes, and she suddenly gasped, her eyes wide. Sweat dribbled on her forehead, as she began to tremble, whimpering in pain. Oni soon pulled away, blinking, as the kunoichi fell unconscious. I've extracted any information from her we might need. I also implanted memories into her head that she was wounded, but we passed her by. She'll be able to heal herself, and get back home. Hinata blinked, as Oni dragged the IWA kunoichi to an alleyway, and left her there, making sure the wounds wouldn't get infected. Maui and Daiban dropped down at that moment. What's going on? Daiban asked, while Maui hugged her brother. Oni turned back to them. Gathering information? This kunoichi will wake up, thinking she was wounded, but was able to hide. I extracted the info we might need from her mind. And... He stopped and tilted his head for a few moments. My dragon Anxia just reported in. She just finished torching the IWA outpost to the ground. They're retreating back to one of their fortresses further in Earth Country. Daiban grinned, while Maui giggled. That's great. Maybe we'll have some peace around here, finally, he said. Kakashi nodded. I hope so too. But for now, we need to return to Konoha. Our mission here is done, and we have no time to waste. Daiban, Maui, you'll keep in contact, and let us know if anything happens? Daiban nodded. Count on it. If you guys need help in this area, we'll be sure to give it. Kakashi nodded. All right. Oni-san, you go ahead back to Konoha, and report in, since you're the fastest. We'll return as soon as we can. Oni gave a simple nod of acknowledgement, as Anxia soon returned. He got onto her back, and looked to Daiban and Maui. Stay safe you two. Let's ride. Anxia roared as she shot into the air. Inside, Kyubi giggled. Let's ride. You're such a dork. She giggled, while Naruto's sweat dropped. Can it fuzzball? He muttered mentally, to Kyubi's snickers. Konoha. One day later Tsunade looked over the info before her. This is accurate? She asked, looking up at Oni. Oni, now clad in his dark outfit with hood and face mask, nodded. It is. I took it straight from her mind. IWA has plans for a massive offensive. It goes right along our southernmost point in the defensive line, before sweeping around to the west to strike at Tsuna. By approaching from that direction, they'll be able to strike far into the land of winds, before they hit desert. Tsuna's forces aren't prepared to defend their eastern flank, and IWA could cause a lot of damage by the time they get around to driving them out. Tsunade sighed. The problem is, we can't shift our forces from our defensive line, or Tsuna's. It will tip IWA off, that we know. Oni scratched his chin. Then we'll have to make sure they're slowed down as much as possible, so that when they break through, we have ample time to move and engage them. Probably guerrilla attacks by small groups, and traps laid out in front of them. While that is happening, Tsuna can shift a good portion of their forces east, and Iwa's forces will be smashed before they can get to where they're going. Tsunade nodded. I'll bring it up at the next council meeting. Thank you for this info, Oni-san. You're dismissed. Oni nodded, and he leapt out the window, bouncing off rooftops back to the Namake's estate. Inside the walls of his home, Naruto lowered his face mask, and sighed softly. He walked inside, where Kushina waited. Naruto, another root agent came while you were gone. Danzō is getting impatient. Pretty soon, he won't wait for me anymore, he'll come after you. Naruto nodded. I know. My clones have been tailing his agents, so I know of several exits. But that information I took from that root agent's mind is not enough. Give me a few hours, Mom. And then we'll make plans. Kushina nodded, as Naruto moved past her, and into the indoor training dojo. He sat down, and closed his eyes. Hang on, sis. We'll be coming for you soon. Chapter 14. Bringing down the root. Danzō growled softly, as he looked over the report before him. So, our attempts to steal the documents concerning the sale of Kushina were foiled? The root shinobi before him nodded. Yes, Danzō-sama. As you instructed, our agent wore no items that would connect him to any ninja. The Tsuchikage believes it was just a Ronin shinobi. When he was captured, he detonated the exploding tags on his body, thus ensuring that nothing could be learned from him or his body. Danzō stood. Did any good come from this? The agent nodded again. Yes. The death of our agent made the Tsuchikage and his advisors believe it was an attempt on his life. As such, a number of Iwa's more elite forces have been pulled back, and a goodly portion of their operations have been cancelled. In other words, we've stalled any major plans IWA had. Danzō simply let out a sigh. Good. Then we have given Konoha aid, even if it's a small respite. Still, it would have been better if the documents had been secured. Have all root shinobi stationed in the base remain alert. I fear that soon, we may have to fight. The agent nodded and headed off, while Danzō began to muse silently. As the agent moved away from Danzō's quarters, he was unaware of the presence in his mind. The same presence that had infiltrated the minds of numerous root agents spread throughout Danzō's facility. Back in the Namikaze estate, Naruto had his eyes closed as he did this. Naruto was able to spread his conscious out and enter the consciousness of others. However, while spread out, he couldn't affect them the way he could in one person's mind. Currently, he was using his consciousness to map out the root headquarters. By entering multiple consciousnesses like he was currently, he was able to get multiple perspectives of the base. Eventually, he sighed and opened his eyes. He immediately grabbed a piece of paper and began sketching. He murmured softly to himself, as Kyubi helped him remember details he had forgotten, as did Anxia. Finally he stepped out of the dojo, and went out back where his mom was sharpening her katana. She looked up, as he held up the rolled-up piece of paper. It's done! She nodded and quickly followed him inside, where they would be safe from prying eyes and ears. Naruto laid out the scroll, which was a map. I managed to make a map of Danzō's lair. From what I could tell, it's at least 10 to 20 stories high, and is buried under Konoha. Actually, that's only partially true. A good majority of the entrances are in Konoha. The complex itself is about 2 miles south of town. It centers around this massive open cylinder here, which is the hub. This lower area serves as a training floor, med wing, and main armory. These 2 floors here above it are the main barracks and secondary armories. He pointed out each area, while Kushina nodded. The floor above that is where the experimental labs, torture and interrogation rooms, prison cells, and the offices of the ranking members of Root are up here near the top are all located. Including dear old Danzō's office. Naruto pulled out a pencil and circled one area. From what I can tell, this is where they're keeping Tayuya. It's a special prison, one for people they want in the best condition. It's also the most impenetrable cell ever made, almost impossible to escape from. Kushina slowly nodded. Okay, so what's the plan? Can we sneak into one of the entrances in Konoha? Naruto shook his head. No. Each entrance has seals on it, which scan a person's chakra, meaning a transformation is out. They also detect fluctuations in chakra, so even a Yamanaka wouldn't be able to get in using their jutsus. Aburame insects are out too, as the seals scan everything that comes in, and if it's blood or chakra isn't in one of the seals, you're dead. So there's no way to infiltrate this place. Kushina shook her head. There has to be a way in. Naruto chuckled. Oh, there is. The problem? The only way in is to go in fighting. Kushina's eyes widened as Naruto explained his plan. Then a grin spread across her face. I like it. Naruto smirked. I thought you would. I just need to find the right place, and then we can proceed. He rolled the map up. It's time to bring down the root. Outside Konoha, that night Naruto, in his regular clothing, crept through the trees towards the approximate position of Danzō's root headquarters. He grinned, noting that the ground in his target area was actually a large clearing. Naruto knelt and touched the ground, his eyes closing. This is the spot. I'd feel it. The ground is thinnest in this area. It shouldn't be a problem. He slowly stood and held his hands out. Deloi Risa, earth rise. The earth began to rise up in the area, and Naruto moved his hands again, causing the earth to move to one side. Where it had once lain, Naruto found concrete. He smirked, pulling out several high-yield explosive tags, and placing them on key points of the exposed area. He gave each a set amount of chakra, which would slowly bleed away. Once the chakra was gone, the tags would ignite and explode, Finished with his task, Naruto moved the earth back over it. He grinned. As he turned to leave. As he was hopping from tree to tree, he stopped when he heard something. He turned and began to follow the noise. He stopped in the trees at the edge of a clearing, and blinked. He smiled, watching the kunoichi in the field before him. Hinata panted, gripping her swords. Around her were dummies she had brought with her. Most of them were slashed over their bodies, with a few actually having body parts gone, or were severed in half. She slowly raised her swords, looking at the last puppet. She swung fast, the blade of one sword cutting deep along its neck, the other coming up and gutting the dummy's stomach with the crescent blade above the hilt. She pulled back, watching as the dummy fall over. She took a deep breath, before tensing and turning her head slightly. "How long were you there?" she asked over her shoulder. Naruto silently landed on the ground. "About 5 minutes. Long enough to see you land the final blow." She sighed, as she sheathed the swords on her back, and began cleaning the dummies up by sealing them into a storage scroll. "And what brings you clear out here? Are you stalking me now?" Naruto chuckled. "Nope. I'm actually out here for a very important reason." "And you?" She bit her lip. "I'm restless, and it's your fault." His eyes widened. "What did I do?" She whirled on him. "It was those damn words you said. I can't get them out of my head. I'm so confused. First, I'm not strong enough to be recognized by my clan or most of the village. Then you die, and I become a jounin, and everyone recognizes my strength. But instead of being happy and accepting me, most people seem sad or scared. And not only that, but you come and tell me you thought the old me was stronger than the new me. I'm just so confused." Naruto blinked. He closed his eyes, thinking on what she just said. "I think I know what the problem is, Hinata. The problem is you're incomplete." Hinata looked at him with confused eyes, so he elaborated. "Before I left on my training trip, before I died, you were a very kind and caring person. Your personality certainly did not match that of a shinobi, who is supposed to kill for their village. But you still had something powerful. Compassion. Then I died. And you became pretty much the ideal shinobi. Cold, ruthless, deadly. But in the process, you lost what really made you, well, you. And for a while, it didn't matter because you believed you didn't have a reason for all those emotions and stuff. See Hinata, you are a shinobi of the village. Which means you need to have the ability to fight enemies, and to kill them, if need be. But shinobi are not just killing machines. A shinobi is a person too, with all the emotional baggage that comes with. A shinobi without their emotions might as well just be a kunai. A weapon to be used, and tossed aside when they have lost their use. It's your emotions that give you life, and give you purpose when you can no longer be a shinobi." Hinata was looking down. "But I don't get it, Naruto. Why should I need these emotions, if I became so strong without them? It doesn't make any sense." Naruto looked at her. "Tell me, Hinata, when you run into your sister, what happens? Do your teammates still joke around you, and ask you to come do fun, meaningless things with them? Do you take time to simply stare at the night sky, and enjoy the stars?" Hinata sat there thinking. The last time she had seen Hanabi, her sister actually flinched away from her with fear in her eyes. Her teammates never talked to her beyond what was needed for missions. Naruto slowly looked at her swords. "I've heard rumors about these swords. It's said they were once your mother's. Did she use them, the way you are using them? Or did she use them to protect others, only taking a life when there was no other way?" Hinata froze, looking at him slowly. "Don't you dare bring my mother into this," she whispered, her eyes hardening. Naruto knew he had struck a nerve, and pushed on. "Do you think your mom would be proud, knowing her daughter has become a killer? Not just a shinobi, but a destroyer of lives?" Hinata raised her hand to slap him, but stopped, as her hand trembled. Tears began to stream down her eyes as she shook. Finally her hand dropped, as she began to quietly cry. Naruto sighed, as he slowly placed a hand on her shoulder. "Hinata, being able to kill an enemy doesn't make you strong. I have killed, and sometimes I'm happy when I do, but only because I know the enemy I'm killing was a truly horrible person, who ruined lives. When I fight others, when I fight people who are simply doing their job, I take no pleasure in killing. I mourn the loss of life. That's what makes a person strong, Hinata. That is the real strength of a shinobi, Hinata. Being able to hold on to your humanity, while doing what you have to do for the village." She kept sobbing for several minutes, while Naruto just sat there. Eventually, the sobs quieted, and she wiped away tears. She slowly looked up at him. "What do I do?" she whispered. Naruto sighed softly as he got up. "I can't tell you what to do, Hinata, except that you must find balance between your shinobi side and your human side. How you find and achieve that balance is up to you." He turned to leave, but stopped. "Some advice though. Try starting with your family, and working outwards. I'm sure your cousin and sister would love to have some of the old Hinata back, more than anyone." With that, he left. Hinata watched silently, before looking back up at the sky. She couldn't help but be in awe of the clear night sky, peppered with thousands of stars. "Balance, huh?" she whispered softly. Early the next morning, Danzō sighed as he got up from his bed. He wasn't able to get a good sleep, as he had been plagued by nightmares all night long. All of them involving the demon dragon rider coming after him. No matter what he did, that black armored figure had chased him down. He shook his head as he picked up his cane and began to get ready for the day ahead. Elsewhere, Tsunade slowly stretched and got off the couch in the Hokage's office. She had fallen asleep there, wanting to get an early start on her paperwork. He looked out the window and smiled. A beautiful day. Hope nothing disturbs it. At the Namake's estate, Naruto finished strapping the last piece of armor on himself. He picked up his shield and slung it onto his back. He turned to his mom, who had stepped from her room. In place of her usually red sweater-like top and black shorts, she now wore Anbu-like clothing, with a reinforced armored vest and flexible but durable leather pauldrons, bracers, and shin guards. The hunter-nin mask she had used as Zetsumai was clipped to her side, as she put her hair into a tight ponytail. As she slipped the mask on, Naruto nodded. "Ready?" She nodded. "Ready. Then it's time," he said as he led them out back. Anxia waited eagerly for them. In the root headquarters, the root shinobi were going about their usual business. There was little conversation, other than what had to be said. Only the newest recruits, who were not emotionless drones yet, were avidly talking with each other. Not one of them was aware of the explosive tags that were slowly running out of chakra. Chakra that was suppressing the fuses for each tag. Above, Anxia flew over the walls of Konoha, causing the guards to blink. "What are they doing?" one asked. "Best inform Hokage-sama," another said before shining away. Naruto grinned, as they landed a safe distance from the clearing when he had planted the tags. "About a half hour more. Get ready, Mom." She nodded as she gripped the hilt of her katana. Tsunade blinked, as one of the wall guards appeared before her. "What is it?" "Hokage-sama, I came to report that we saw the demon dragon rider and Kushina Namake's leave Konoha. They left over the south wall with the black dragon." The guard remained at attention, awaiting her orders. Tsunade turned, looking out the window of her office. "What are they doing?" Danzō entered his office, and slowly limped to his seat behind his desk. Immediately, a root shinobi appeared. "Danzō-sama, we've lost contact with the root agent who was supposed to watch Kushina and the demon dragon rider." Danzō tensed. "Put all shinobi on alert. Prepare the base defenses." As the shinobi disappeared, Danzō gripped his cane and began limping to the prison cells. "Damn you, Kushina! You couldn't play by my rules. Now you'll see your daughter die." Just as he exited his office, his danger senses went off. He looked up at the ceiling of the central hub. His eyes blinked as he felt a small flare of chakra, before several explosions ripped the ceiling apart. At Konoha, the wall-top sentries were shocked by the sudden appearance of smoke and flames not too far from the village. "Warn the Hokage, and lock the village down!" Above the explosion, Anxia seemed to grin. "We brought down the roof. Now it's time to bring down the root." Naruto finished, as Anxia went into a dive. The root shinobi scattered as debris rained down, smashing into the walkways crossing from wall to wall in the central hub. Danzō was thrown back off his feet by the force of the explosion, due to the proximity of the explosion. As he struggled to his feet, his eye widened as the smoke of the explosion shot forward, then parted to reveal the black dragon of the demon dragon rider. Anxia roared, as she flared her wings, launching flames straight down. The raw heat of her flames ripped through the walkways, incinerating concrete, metal, and flesh alike. Anxia slowed her descent near one of the mid-level entrances. Kushina and Naruto leapt off there. Anxia nodded to them, and flapped, heading out of now damaged root headquarters. In the tight central area, she'd be trapped easily, Naruto looked to his mom. Find Tayuya. I'll distract them. Kushina nodded and headed off into the corridors, while Naruto drew Vindr and his shield. As he turned, he saw the root shinobi begin to regroup. Most were trying to understand what was happening, but a few saw Oni. They immediately went to attack him. Naruto grinned. Guess I won't have to hide what I can do anymore. 10 shadow clones appeared around him. They all charged, ready to fight. The two sides clashed in combat, with more root shinobi pouring in as they noticed the fight. Naruto whirled, Vindr cutting through one shinobi's arm, before he bashed him away with his shield. He watched as 2 more launched a combination of fire and wind at him, and he leapt over the attack, launching kunai at them both. They jumped back, only to be gutted by a clone. Naruto smirked, only for it to falter as more root shinobi poured from the lower levels. What made him cringe was he could sense they were either brainwashed victims, or young people who didn't know better. He closed his eyes, before nodding to 2 of his clones. They both leapt down, moving to incapacitate them. Meanwhile, Danzō had stumbled to the edge of the corridor leading from his office to the central hub. A bit of walkway remained in front of him, littered with burning debris. Sunlight poured through the opening above. Behind him, a pale effeminate boy landed, wearing a very short shirt with 1 long sleeve and 1 short one. He also had pants on, as well as fingerless gloves and a tanto on his back. Danzō-sama, the demon dragon rider is attacking our shinobi on the lower levels. Not only that, but he seems to be using a clone jutsu. Possibly shadow clones. The root shinobi said. Danzō stiffened slightly. Shadow clones, that's a Konoha technique. How could he have learned it, unless, perhaps Kushina allowed him to study from the Yandame's libraries? No matter. I want him captured. Now! Sai nodded. I should also report Kushina-san is here. Her whereabouts are unknown. Danzō looked over his shoulder. Take a squad. Find her and hold her. Sai nodded before he left. Danzō looked down at the fight below. Fu Torian. 2 of his root agents in cloaks appeared behind him. We're going to deal with this upstart. Kushina grinned, as another root agent slid off her blade. Told you not to stand between me and my daughter. She rushed onward, searching each and every cell she came across, before finding a very heavy door guarded by 2 masked shinobi. They both drew tantos and charged, while Kushina gripped her katana. There was a brief flash of light, 2 spurts of blood, and then Kushina was past them. She flicked her blade free of blood, and sheathed it with a flourish, as the 2 shinobi slowly slid in half, spurting blood everywhere. Kushina grabbed a set of keys off one of them, and began trying to open the door. Finally, she was able to unlock the door. She practically kicked it open, and walked in. Her eyes widened out. A figure was huddled on a cot, under a blanket. Red hair covered the pillow the figure's head rested on. They lay on the cot, making no movement except for their steady and somewhat shallow breathing. Kushina rushed to the figure's side, and gently shook them. Tayuya! Tayuya, please answer me! Tayuya weakly moved, her head lifting up, showing eyes that were somewhat glazed. Who are you? Kushina's eyes misted behind her mask, before she shook her head. I'm here to get you out of here. Don't worry, she said, as she slowly picked Tayuya up, wrapping her in the blanket. She turned, only to stop. I'm afraid you can't leave, Kushina-san. Danzō-sama has ordered your capture, Sai said, with 3 root shinobi behind him. Kushina growled. You don't want to fuck with me. Not now or ever, she said, as a clone appeared behind her and took Tayuya. The 3 root shinobi charged. As Kushina turned, 2 of Naruto's clones were surrounded by 10 root shinobi. They smirked at each other. First 1 to 5? You're on, the other said. They both charged into the group. Another smirked, as he watched his wind jutsu scatter some root shinobi across the place. Specifically, it scattered their body parts. He whirled, as a young shinobi charged. The clone sighed, as he seemed to vanish, knocking the young shinobi out. The root shinobi were slowly being obliterated. Despite their almost constant training, they didn't have the physical enhancements of Oni, due to his bonding with Anxia. Nor did they have the advantage of being able to enter others' minds and shut them down that way. The real Naruto grinned, as he watched from the shadows. One of his clones was facing against a shinobi who was pretty good with a kuzuridama. The clone raised a hand, and beckoned him forward. The root shinobi charged, swinging fast with the weighted end of the chain. The Naruto clone ducked under it, but the chain came around again, grabbing his leg and yanking him off balance. The root shinobi grinned, only for his eyes to widen as the armored figure he was fighting grabbed the chain and pulled him towards him. With a yell, he was pulled forward and onto the claws of one of the sabinots of the clone. His eyes widened before he poofed into a rock. The clone's eyes widened before the chain gave off a bunch of volts, dispelling him. The root shinobi yanked his chain back, only to find another armored figure practically materializing in front of him. A clawed fist smashed into his face, knocking him out and opening his face up. Naruto suddenly jumped back as a kunai hit the ground where he stood. He looked up to see Danzō and the two cloaked figures standing on a broken walkway above him. So, we finally meet Oni. No council or Hokage to get in the way, Danzō said, holding his cane. Naruto chuckled demonically. Oh yes, nothing to stop me from making you pay for what you've done, he said, as he charged forward. The two cloaked figures moved to intercept him. One ripped the glove from his right hand, as his hand began to blacken. Naruto's eyes widened and flipped over him, blocking a sword strike from the other one. He landed away from Danzō, as the two figures appeared between him and his target. Play hero by Skillet. Naruto gripped his sword, smirking. What's the matter, Danzō? Too much of a chicken shit to face me yourself? Or is it that you're so weak you flunkies have to fight for you? The two cloaked figures took a step forward, but were stopped by Danzō's raised hand. Do not lower yourselves to respond to his insults. I shall show him how wrong he is. Danzō slowly removed the large sling that covered his right arm, revealing that his forearm was covered in large metal seals. Slowly, he began to remove them, only to have to jump back as Naruto's sword slammed down where he stood. You really think I'll give you time to reveal whatever you're about to reveal? The armored figure spun away, as the shinobi with the sword slashed at him. Naruto growled softly. You two are annoying me, he said, as the other figure held his hand out. The blackness seemed to lift off him, and headed towards Naruto in a dark cloud. Naruto held out his own hand. I don't think so. Brisnker. Black flames leapt out, engulfing the cloud. They continued onward towards the figure, who tried to pull back. He was partially successful, as his right was severely burned. Naruto tried to turn back to Danzō, but was caught off guard by the sword wielder. The blade grated against his pauldron, leaving one long scratch. Naruto whirled, backhanding him into a rock. The shinobi, caught off guard, grunted as he hit, only for his eyes widened as he felt sudden pain. His right hand slowly separated from his wrist, as Naruto flicked his sword clean of blood. Stay down, you'll live longer. He turned just as the other figure grabbed him. He suddenly felt something entering through the tiniest openings of his chainmail, and affect his left arm. He dropped his shield, grunting in pain as his left arm shook. My microscopic bugs are very poisonous. You won't be able to move in about 20 seconds. The cloaked figure said. An aburame, huh? Too bad for you, your bugs entered the wrong person. He growled, as the glow of his eyes increased. He roared as a red aura erupted around him, sending the cloaked aburame flying. His arms stopped shaking, and he charged forward. The aburame barely managed to get to his feet when Naruto's left hand closed around his neck, burning it. He was pushed backwards, as the armored figure shoved him before him, straight onto a twisted metal support beam. Naruto pulled away, as the aburame struggled on the beam, like a butterfly pinned to a wall. Stick around, he said, as he turned back to Danzō, who had undone all the metal seals. Danzō's eyes narrowed. That chakra, that demonic taint. I've felt it before. Naruto grinned under his helmet. Well, you won't feel it again after today. You're through. Naruto gripped his sword and charged. Danzō slowly unwrapped the bandages around his right arm, before he looked up at Naruto. Naruto stopped, trembling slightly at what he saw. Danzō's arm was covered in Sharingan eyes, all looking out at him. Danzō slowly held his hand out. What's the matter, demon? Afraid of a few Sharingans? Naruto trembled. So it wasn't enough that the Uchiha clan was slaughtered, but now, you desecrate them, for your own power? Danzō simply stared at him impassively. You fool! Power is all that matters. That is what I want. The power to protect and rule over Konoha. A village that has grown soft due to morals like that pathetic will of fire. There can't be peace for the village by being good and just. By being friends with others. Not in this world. That is why I want your power under my command. So that Konoha will be protected. Naruto growled, as the aura around him intensified. You're wrong, you have no idea how wrong you are! With a roar, he suddenly appeared in front of Danzō, gutting him. Danzō's eye widened as he spat up blood, before suddenly vanishing. Naruto turned his armored head in time to see the leader of Root finishing a series of hand signs. He sucked in, and launched a series of spear-like wind blasts. Naruto whirled, crossing his arms in front of him. The winds knocked him back, scratching and denting his armor. When it finished, he growled. My turn! He raised his hands, and the rocks around them both raised up, before they all shot straight at Danzō. The Warhawk was crushed multiple times. Naruto panted softly, before his eyes widened, and he whirled, blocking a choke strike at his neck. Danzō grunted softly, as Naruto growled. What does it take to kill you? Danzō pushed a little harder. It's impossible for you. You can't beat me. Naruto growled, until he heard Kyuubi's voice. Naruto, look at his arm! Naruto looked, and his eyes widened. Two of the Sharingan eyes on Danzō's arm had closed. Naruto looked back at Danzō. It's those Sharingan eyes. They're doing something to stop my attacks, aren't they? Danzō's good eye widened, before he actually let the smallest of smirks appear. Perceptive? Yes. This technique is an Uchiha Dijutsu technique. And since you can't win, I'll let you know the truth of it. This technique is called Izanagi. With it, for the briefest of moment, I can control everything. I can use to bend space and time, to ensure that any injury, or even death, becomes little more than a dream. Naruto growled. Is that so? Well, I'm just going to have to shatter your dream. He kicked Danzō away, as he stood there, panting slightly. Easier said than done. How do I defeat him, if he's using something that prevents me from killing him? Obviously he can't use it indefinitely, as each time he has so far, one of those eyes close. But I can't keep this up forever. Sooner or later, he'll catch me off guard. Wait, does it only negate physical attacks? Danzō stood there. I'll give you this one chance. Surrender to me. If not, then I'm afraid you won't enjoy watching me torture your companion and the girl Tayuya. Naruto stiffened, and growled. Don't you ever. He slowly began to remove his helmet. Ever. He dropped the helmet, as Danzō's eyes widened in surprise. Ever threaten my family again? Naruto roared, as Kyuubi's chakra enveloped him. On the surface, dozens of Konoha shinobi had gathered near the explosion, including Tsunade and Hinata. Everyone was thrown back by the eruption of power that exploded outwards. Danzō spat up blood, as Naruto's clawed gauntlet ripped into his stomach, spilling blood and organs on the floor. He vanished, only to have to duck under a reverse roundhouse kick. Naruto landed and swung one of the three chakra tails behind him at Danzō, sending him flying into a wall. Before he rushed after him, Danzō phased away, but Naruto whirled, and grabbed him as he reappeared behind him. This is your end, he shouted, as their eyes connected. Danzō suddenly found himself in a black void. He looked around, before he was suddenly thrown against a wall, with chains wrapping around his arms. Genjutsu. No matter. I'll use Izanagi and escape. It's pointless. Danzō attempted to use his jutsu, only to find nothing was happening. So, my theory was right. You can't use Izanagi to escape a mind probe, or mental assault. Not while your consciousness is trapped here. Naruto approached, still in his armor. Danzō struggled, his one eye wide. What do you mean? Izanagi should be able to handle any jutsu, even the Yamanaka's. Naruto chuckled. This isn't a jutsu, you bastard. This is me using my new powers to rip into your mind, and take control. Of course, it's much harder to do it on you than those root agents of yours. Your mental willpower is exceptional, especially when backed by those Sharingan eyes. I'm having to throw all my concentration into this. Outside, the cloaked root shinobi who had his sword hand removed by Naruto stumbled towards where Danzō and Naruto stood. He gripped a kunai in his good hand as he prepared to stab Naruto, when he was knocked down by the lifeless body of Sai. Kushina appeared with Tayuya on her back. Let the kiddies play, she told the root agent, kicking him in the face. Naruto grinned, as he turned. Well, I think it's time to end this. You know, I was going to kill you for threatening my sister and mom, especially since you had my mom sold into slavery. But since you did this all to get to little old me, I'm flattered. So I'll let you live. That way, you can enjoy my mom and sister's company. But first, I think I'll shut down that technique of yours. Danzō's eye widened, as in the real world, his body halting drew wind from Naruto. He struggled to regain control, and the sword faltered, before rising up and chopping his own arm off. Danzō screamed in pain, as Naruto grinned. Well, that takes care of that. Kami, you know how good this feels? I've spent so long planning this, waiting for the chance to pay you back for what you did to me and my mom. And now, I'm finally free of you. Free of the constant weight and shadow you threw over me. I hope you enjoy your eternity in hell, Danzō. Because that is where you're going. Naruto pulled back from his probe into Danzō's mind. Danzō screamed in pain and rage, only to be silenced by the right hook from Kushina, that knocked him out. The two of them stood there, surrounded on all sides by debris, and the bodies of the dead or incapacitated root shinobi. They both grinned at each other, only for it to fade when dozens of Konoha Anbu dropped down around them. Tsunade soon followed, only to stop at what she was seeing. WH. What? Naruto? She whispered. Naruto chuckled softly, giving Tsunade a subdued version of his once infamous foxy grin. Hey Bachan. Long time no see. Chapter 15. Revealing the Demon. Tsunade stood there in absolute shock. Before her stood Naruto. The Naruto who had given her new life, the boy who had made it worth living again. The boy who had died on the training trip with Jiraiya, except he wasn't dead. He was standing there, decked in the armor of the demon dragon rider. In one hand he gripped the black, rune-covered sword, which now dripped with Danzō's blood. The other hand had picked his helmet up. Around her, the Anbu with her were shocked a well. Here before them was the destroyer of one of Iwa's greatest border outposts, the man who had single-handedly caused Kumo to leave the war. To find out that the man who did all that was actually the blonde knucklehead who had been dead last in the academy completely blew their minds. Naruto shifted a bit, while Kushina gripped Tayuya closer to her. The red-haired flute player just lay in Kushina's arms, oblivious to the world around her due to the sedatives placed in her by Danzō's shinobi. There was silence for several moments, before Naruto finally cleared his throat. So, Bachan? You going to say something? He asked nervously. Tsunade, on pure instinct, growled at being called that. You annoying brat! She shouted, rushing at him. Naruto tensed, only to find himself wrapped in a hug, as Tsunade hugged him. Kushina let out a sigh of relief, as Naruto blinked in surprise. Tsunade hugged him close, crying. You stupid brat, you died, stupid annoying kid! She whimpered. Naruto felt his eyes soften, as he hugged her back. Sorry, Bachan. I'm sorry I hurt you, he said softly. The Anbu awkwardly hung back, unsure of what to do. Their problem was solved when Jiraiya landed near them. Tsunade, what's going on? He asked, confused as to why Tsunade was hugging the black armored figure. Then he saw Naruto's face, and his eyes widened. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya, who was just staring at Naruto, his eyes wide. She looked at her Anbu, then to Kushina and Naruto. Maybe we should go somewhere more private to talk about this, she whispered. Tsunade's office. 30 minutes later Naruto stood before Tsunade and Jiraiya in the Hokage's office. Kushina had taken Tayuya to the hospital, while Danzō was kept in a stasis scroll on Kushina's person. Tsunade had finally gotten over the shock and happiness of seeing Naruto alive, and now he could see the barely restrained anger in her eyes. Naruto, while I'm happy to see you, I'm also I don't think angry is the right word, but that's what I am. I'm angry that you have apparently been gone these 4 years without letting me know you were even alive. Would you mind explaining why it is you're alive, and have decided not to let Konoha know you're alright? Naruto took a deep breath. Okay, but it's a long story. And so he explained. He told them about how Eragon found him and nursed him back to health. How he had found the dragon eggs and that Anxia had hatched for him. He explained that he had stayed to train and become stronger for Konoha, only for that goal to change as he better understood the power he had. His face saddened as he talked about Eragon's death, then Kyuubi's attempt to take him over. With anger, he explained about how he had learned about his father, mother, and the treachery of Sarutobi. Both were shocked when they heard this, but kept their questions for later. He then told them about his mercenary work, leading up to his attack on Rutake, and the discovery of his mom. He told them about their journey to discover how Kushina had been captured and sold into slavery. He produced documents taken from a now-dead Iwa slaver, and additional copies made of documents in the Tsuchukage's office. They showed the transaction had taken place between one of Danzō's most trusted shinobi and the Tsuchikage himself. Lastly, he summarized his and his mother's missions after that, before being hired by Konoha. When he finished, Tsunade and Jiraiya sat there in silence. Naruto sighed as he looked to one side. I know I should have sent a message about me being okay, but if I did, you would have ordered me home. And if Konoha was in a position where they could use me and my powers freely, I just couldn't live with the idea of being used to conqueror when my powers are meant to protect the balance. Tsunade slowly nodded. I understand, Naruto, and after the way you've been treated, I can't entirely blame you, she said as a sad smile worked its way onto her lips. Naruto smiled softly, before looking at Jiraiya, who was simply staring at him. Before he could speak, Jiraiya hugged him fiercely. Don't you ever dare do something like this again, you hear me? I can't lose you again, Naruto. I can't. Naruto smiled softly. It's okay, pervy sage. Just promise to do a better job raising me. Jiraiya smiled. I will. I promise. Naruto nodded softly. Before any of them could speak, one of the ANBU who had been present at the ruins of the root headquarters appeared. Hokage-sama, the council has gathered. They are requesting answers concerning the explosions, smoke, and fire that occurred outside Konoha. Tsunade sighed. Naruto, it might be best to keep your identity hidden for now. Naruto looked at her, before grinning. Maybe, he said, as he placed his helmet on. Or maybe it's time Konoha got a shake-up. Tsunade blinked before grinning. You have no idea how much I've missed that. The three of them quickly headed for the council room. As soon as they entered, every head turned towards them. They all were surprised to see the black armored figure with them. Hamura stood up as spokesperson for the council. Tsunade, what happened? We've only heard rumors and reports on what caused the explosion outside the wall. Tsunade went to her chair and sat down. I have only recently discovered what the explosion was. To be precise, it was caused by him. She pointed to Oni as she said that. Everyone turned to him, as he stood there. It's simple. I was breaking into the secret headquarters of the ANBU organization known as Root. Everyone blinked before Koharu stood. You must be mistaken. Root was disbanded after the end of the Third Shinobi War. Jiraiya took this moment to step in. I'm afraid that we were deceived. Root was still active, but as a separate entity from Konoha's armed forces. They answered only to Danzō. And these documents prove that. He placed several documents on the council table. As the two elders looked at the papers, Shibi took over. Where is Danzō now? The helmet of the demon dragon rider turned towards him. Currently, he is trapped in a stasis scroll held by Kushina Namikaze. Immediately, some of the civilians stood. What right does she have in detaining him? He should be brought here to defend himself. One shouted. Oni looked at him. She is detaining him because both me and her have business with him. And we will not give him the chance to twist the accusations that will be brought up against him. We have waited too long for justice against him. He growled, his eyes flashing. Hayashi blinked. What do you mean? Oni looked at him, before pulling out a scroll and opening it. He placed a ledger and several documents on the table before Tsunade. I mean these, Hayashi-san. Danzō was responsible for the kidnapping of Kushina Namikaze 18 years ago. He sold her to the Tsuchikage, who turned her over to an IWA slaver, who sold her to at least 7 different owners. He also aided Orochimaru in the kidnap of Tayuya Namikaze, daughter of Kushina and Minato Namikaze. Everyone blinked at the last part. They had all known about the Namikaze's first child, but it had paled in comparison to the birth of Naruto and the Kyuubi attack. Many people had simply shunted it to the back of their mind. As the documents were passed around, one of the civilians looked to Oni. Well, I can understand why Kushina Namikaze would want revenge against Danzō, but what about you? What did he do to you? Oni looked at him, before looking at Tsunade, who was about to interrupt. Hold, Hokage-sama. I want to answer him. Tsunade blinked before sitting down. I understand. But before you do, I want to make some things clear. What is about to be revealed here is an S-rank secret. You cannot reveal this to anyone, without mine or Oni's express permission. Understood? Everyone blinked and nodded. Oni nodded, as he reached up and undid the chin strap of his helmet. Danzō can pretty much be held responsible for the beginning of my horrible life. A life that many of you helped make even more horrible. But he is the beginning of it all. he said simply. Everyone blinked. Oni, I'm afraid you have us confused. What did we do to you? Shibi asked, his voice actually sounding confused. Oni simply gripped his helmet. Let me show you, he said before he pulled his helmet off. Everyone in the room gasped in surprise as Naruto smirked at them. You all get the picture now? They sat there in absolute silence before Hamura rounded on Tsunade. You knew this? You knew he was the dragon rider? Tsunade gave him a stern glance. I do not like your tone, advisor, she said, reminding him of his place. Many people were shocked to hear the steel in her voice, considering that she had been rather docile in council meetings the last 4 years. Hamura backed down as Naruto spoke. Tsunade-sama didn't know it was me until today. She, Jiraiya, and a dozen ANB were the ones to arrive after I defeated Danzō in one-on-one combat. I would also like to present additional evidence against Danzō. With that, he pulled out another scroll, unrolled it, and unsealed Danzō's severed right arm and a Sharingan eye. Everyone gasped in revulsion as Naruto held both items up. This is Danzō's right arm, the one he kept in a sling. There are close to 14 Sharingan eyes implanted into this arm. And this eye here, he held it up, was in his right eye socket. Obviously, someone profited well from the Uchiha massacre. As he sealed them away, many of the council members looked sick. Others were staring at Naruto in fear, awe, and respect. But a few still gave somewhat concealed looks of anger. Tsunade hesitantly took the scroll from Naruto. Thank you. I'll have this analyzed immediately. Naruto nodded and backed from the table. As he did, one of the civilian council members stood. Hokage-sama, while we applaud Naruto-san for his actions against an obvious criminal of Konoha, and for his work thus far in aiding Konoha in the war, I'm afraid there is a problem. Everyone's eyes turned to the council member. Some were neutral, but more than one burned with anger. He ignored their glares and continued. Naruto-san disappeared 4 years ago, and was declared Kia while on a training trip with Jiraiya-sama. As we can plainly see, he was not dead. But if he is not dead, then he abandoned Konoha for the past 4 years. We have been at war with Kumo, Oto, and IWA for close to 2 years now. And he, as a ninja of Konoha, should have returned. As far as I can tell, Naruto-san is a missing nin who deserted his home in its hour of need. Immediately Hayashi leapt to his feet. You dare call him a traitor, when he has done nothing but help this ungrateful and undeserving village? Others were about to join in the argument, when Naruto raised a hand, silencing them. His eyes glanced at Hayashi, showing coldness but some gratefulness. Then they turned to the civilian. I won't argue with you. I willingly chose to not return to Konoha. Even if this village made my life a living hell, I was a Konoha shinobi, and should have returned to help. The civilian council member looked smug, until Naruto smiled. However, you forget something. Even if I did desert Konoha, it doesn't matter. I am immune from any punishment for criminal or treasonous acts I made against Konoha in the past. Shikaka blinked, then his eyes widened. His contract. Naruto nodded. Indeed, Narasama. When I made my contract with Konoha, and my mom's as well, we made sure one of the stipulations of the contract was that neither of us could be punished for our past crimes against Konoha, which included desertion. Since Naruto Namikaze and the Demon Dragon Rider are the same, what applied to him in the contract applies to me. The civilian council member mentally cursed, as he slowly sat down. Surprisingly, he was one of the few who seemed upset. Even most of the civilians present were nodding in approval. Naruto simply nodded back. I know that next, you'll all probably wish to ask me to rejoin Konoha's rank. Unfortunately, I cannot do so, he said. Everyone murmured at this, as Naruto turned. It's not so much a dislike of Konoha. I just cannot side with one village. I know that sounds silly, considering I have sided with Konoha here. But that is because IWA, Oto, and Kumo threaten the balance of this world. I am siding with the side that will restore it. My duty as a demon dragon rider is to protect the balance of this world, and ensure that it doesn't fall into anarchy. Kohara looked at him. But why must you do that? Is it a prophecy, or something? She asked. Naruto smiled, and shook his head. No. It's not a prophecy, it's simply my duty. I have great power. Power beyond imagine. If I wanted to, I could kill everyone in this room with a simple thought. Everyone cringed at that, and Naruto chuckled. Don't worry, I won't use it, unless you deserve it. But see? How could I allow one village to control that kind of power? It would bring nothing but misery or death to those who are innocent. No. I cannot belong to one village. I belong to all, he said softly. Everyone looked at him sadly, but Tsunade nodded softly. I understand, Naruto, though I wish I could convince you to stay. Naruto smiled. I can still come back to visit, he said. Tsunade nodded as she sat down. Hamura looked at her. What about Danzō? What is his punishment? Tsunade was about to answer, when Naruto interrupted. If it would please the council, my mother and I have been talking about a punishment for Danzō. With your permission, we shall execute it as soon as possible. Everyone blinked before Shikaka stood. I think I speak for everyone when I say he and Kushina-san have earned that right. I agree. Almost everyone followed suit, and Tsunade nodded. Very well. Naruto, you may begin the execution when you're ready. I only ask that the council witness it. Naruto blinked, but slowly nodded. Agreed, he said, as he slowly put his helmet on. Well, time to go see my sis, he said. Konoha Hospital. Kushina sat next to the bed containing Tayuya. The nurses had easily expunged the sedatives inside her system, and told Kushina that with some rest, Tayuya would be fine. Except for her legs. Kushina looked down at them. She had cried softly when she had heard that her little girl wouldn't be able to walk again. The nurses had said that not even Tsunade could repair the damage, as it had been left alone too long to be dealt with. They had been skeptical that it could have been healed even right after the injury. She gently moved some hair from her daughter's face. Oh, Tayuya! I'm so sorry, she whispered, as she gently placed a hand on her cheek. The redhead stirred at the feel of the hand on her cheek, before her eyes opened blearily. Mama? She asked wearily, before falling unconscious again. Kushina blinked before a smile spread across her face. She gripped Tayuya's hand. Yes. I am. She whispered happily. A few minutes later, Naruto came in. Mom. The council knows about me, and accepted it. They've also given us the go-ahead to take care of Danzō ourselves, as long as they witness it. Kushina grinned. Excellent, she whispered, gripping the stasis scroll. Excellent. Naruto nodded softly. How is she? She woke up for a second, and fell asleep right afterwards. The nurses said she just needs rest, but they also said her legs. Kushina choked softly. Naruto blinked, then turned, and slowly began to examine Tayuya's legs. He sighed softly. Her spine was broken, and reset off balance. Her chakra pathways to her legs were badly damaged as well. She nodded. They said that, even Tsunade can heal her, that she won't ever be able to walk again. Naruto blinked, then grinned. Did you forget who your son is? He asked, grinning. Isn't that right, Anxia? Anxia's head appeared upside down outside the window, and she nodded. Kushina blinked, as Naruto explained. I set her to watch over you and Tayuya from the roof. Anxia rumbled before retracting her head. Kushina looked at him. You mean you can heal her? Naruto sighed softly, looking at his sister. He tilted his head. It's doable, but it will be difficult. She'll have to be sedated and restrained. Having one spine moved back into place, having nerves and tissue be rebuilt, it's not easy on the body, even if she's sedated. Kushina's eyes watered, and she hugged him. Naruto smiled and hugged her back. She'll be fine, trust me, he whispered. Kushina just smiled, wiping away tears. I do. I'm just worried. What if she doesn't want to have anything to do with us? With me? She whispered. I don't want to lose her after just getting her back. Naruto shook his head. She won't be like that. It might be awkward at first, but we'll work something out. She nodded. So, when do you want to deal with Danzō? Naruto's face became grim. Tonight, he whispered. He dies tonight. That night, ANBU HQ. Danzō slowly opened his left eye. He winced in pain, which increased. He couldn't see anything through his right eye, which he knew was uncovered. And his right arm ached. Then his memories returned, and he looked to his right, seeing the stump that had been his arm. Finally awake, I see, Naruto said, as he exited the shadows of the room. Danzō tried to move only to find his good arm and both legs restrained, as was his waist and neck. He growled at the black-clothed figure. So what now? Surely you know that Konoha will punish you for what you've done. Naruto chuckled, as did a female voice from behind. Kushina moved into his view. Actually, Konoha's not going to do anything against him. The council knows about what you've done, and given the go-ahead for your execution. Which is why we're here. They're actually watching. She pointed to a black-tinted window. Danzō blinked in surprise. Do they know who the demon dragon rider is? Naruto chuckled. Yes. I've been exonerated of any charges current or past. Now no more talk, he said, as he came over. A sudden punch dislocated Danzō's jaw, preventing him from talking. Now it's time to set you up for your execution. Which will not be slow. Oh no. The next hour was a scene of gratuitous and soul-shattering violence, mixed with the pain-filled screams that came from the warhawk Danzō. As soon as it was done, Kushina collapsed, panting as tears fell from her eyes. Naruto hugged her close, as she wept. She had gotten such satisfaction from the pain she was giving him, but now that Danzō was dead she felt hollow, empty. She felt disgusted with what she had done. Naruto gently picked her up and supported her outside the room. Many people backed away. As the pair slowly left, it was a silent pair that made their way back to the Namake's estate. Kushina looked at Naruto. Why do I feel empty? She whispered. After everything he did to us, why don't I feel glad? Naruto held her close. Maybe because even if he did such terrible things to us, he was still human, and we shouldn't enjoy taking human lives. It's what shows that we are also still human, he whispered. She still just sobbed as she hugged her son. Naruto held her close, as his own tears fell from his eyes. He thought back over the memories Danzō had, and closed his eyes. In a twisted way, we were the same once. Anxia gently snaked her head in, and nudged them both. She rumbled softly and worriedly. Naruto, I told you too that it was a bad idea to do it yourselves. Naruto looked up at her. Anxia, it was the only way for us to have closure. You know this. He snapped at her. Anxia pulled her head back, growling. If this is the price you pay for it, then you're better off without closure at all. But what do I know, right? I'm just a dragon. She turned and flew off, and Naruto closed his eyes, hugging Kushina closer to him. The next day Tayuya groaned as she stirred in her bed. Ugh, what fucking hit me? She mentally thought. She cracked her eyes open, shut them, then opened them again. She looked around, blinking the sleep from her eyes. Where the fuck am I? She groaned out. You're home. A quiet voice caused her to look to one side. A beautiful red-haired woman with blue eyes smiled softly at her. Tayuya blinked, but groaned as she shifted. Home? I don't have a fucking home. Where am I? Kushina blinked, but set aside her annoyance at the language Tayuya was using. You're in Konoha, and I'm your mother, Kushina Uzumaki Namake's. Tayuya's eyes went wide before she fainted. Chapter 16. Family and Friends. Tayuya sat there on her hospital bed, looking between the red-haired female sitting next to her bed and the young man standing near the window in black clothes, with a hood hiding his hair. So let me get this straight. About 20 years ago, you and Minato Namake's had a red-haired baby girl that you named Tayuya? About a year later, said girl became sick and you took her to the hospital. About an hour after you arrived, she was reported missing. And you believe me to be that girl? She asked, an eyebrow raised. Kushina shook her head. Not believe, no. I know you are my daughter Tayuya. I can feel it. That and Danzō specifically kidnapped you to use as a bargaining chip against me and your brother Naruto. Tayuya looked at Naruto, who nodded distractedly at her. What's your fucking problem? She asked. They both blinked, before Naruto answered. Nothing. Just distracted, he said, as he moved over to them. Naruto was rather upset, because he and Anxia were a bit at odds. He was angry, because a part of him knew she was right, even if he felt he and his mom needed to do what they had done. But also because she seemed to think he only thought of her as a dumb beast, when it was her that had brought that idea out. Tayuya looked at Kushina. I'll admit that some of what you said made some fucking sense, but I'll need more than just your word. As far as I know, I was taken from an orphanage by Orochimaru, and made into one of his personal bodyguards. Kushina twitched. Please stop cussing, she said softly. Tayuya blinked. And why should I? This is how I fucking talk. Naruto sighed softly, as his mom gave a small frown. Tayuya, it's just really annoying when every other word from your mouth is profanity. Could you please try to talk a little more politely? We are family. Tayuya glared at him. I'll talk how I want to fucking talk, and until you give me more proof than this story, I don't believe you. Me, the daughter of Minato Namikaze? Please, really unlikely. Kushina looked down at this, while Naruto gave her a hard look. You could at least not make us feel like crap because you don't believe us, he said harshly. Tayuya trembled slightly, as he had laced his stare with a tiny amount of killer intent. Sorry, I just don't know what to think here. I'm confused, and when that happens, I get defensive. Not to mention the fact that I won't ever be able to walk again. I didn't mean to take it out on you guys. Kushina just gave her a small smile. Well, I hope that I'll have better proof for you soon enough. I asked Tsunade to do a blood test between yours and mine. Tayuya looked at her. Well, if I am your daughter, I hope you don't mind me being a cripple. Hate to be a burden to someone, she said bitterly. Kushina just hugged her, causing Tayuya to blink and look a bit uncomfortable. I could care less, Tayuya. Just having you back would be enough, she whispered. Tayuya awkwardly hugged Kushina, before pulling back. She looked down, twisting the sheets before looking back up. So, how come you're wearing that hood? She asked Naruto, looking at him. Naruto took a deep breath. Basically, I was a ninja of this village, but I disappeared during a 3-year training trip with Jiraiya of the Sannin. I was discovered by an old hermit, who was a warrior from across the oceans. He was one of the few warriors who had bonded with dragons, and was allowed to ride and fight with one of them. When one of the eggs he had hatched for me, he trained me to be a dragon rider. Afterwards I became the demon dragon rider, and have been acting as a mercenary. Konoha hired me, but I decided to hide my true identity. Tayuya blinked, before pointing at him, her eyes wide and white. You're the fucking demon dragon rider? Holy shit. Kushina's eyebrow began to twitch. Please refrain from using bad language, she said. Tayuya looked at her. Or what? She challenged. 10 minutes later, Naruto watched as Tayuya sputtered and spat out soap bubbles while Kushina looked smug. Told you. She just glared at Kushina, before burping out a bubble. She was about to tear Kushina a new one, when the door opened and Tsunade stepped in with a clipboard. She blinked at Tayuya, who still had some soap foam around her mouth. I don't think I want to know. Kushina smiled. Is it done? Tsunade nodded. It is. And the results are a near-perfect match. The only real discrepancy seems to be from a tiny hint of Orochimaru's DNA floating around in there, but that's likely from the curse mark. Tayuya sat there, frozen. She slowly looked at a smiling Kushina, then to Naruto. She slowly looked back to Kushina. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Kushina just smiled, and hugged Tayuya again. It's so good to have you back, she whispered. Tayuya just sat there, before pulling away. No. I'm sorry, but I can't simply accept this. I mean, 1 minute I'm an orphan. Now I'm suddenly the freaking daughter of the Yondaime Hokage. I just don't know what to say or think, she said as she started to hyperventilate. Kushina quickly placed a hand on her shoulder. I know. This is going to be tough, Tayuya, but I'm not expecting you to instantly call me mom and Naruto your brother. I've only been there for 1 year of your life, and Naruto wasn't even born before you were taken. But I do want a chance to form a relationship with you. Please? Tayuya looked at her pleading eyes, then looked down. I guess it might not be a problem. But I'm not dressing up in any frilly dresses or something, she said. Kushina giggled. I wouldn't ask you to. I didn't like to wear those kinds of things either. Of course, then I met your dad, and he really seemed to like it when I did dress up. Naruto smiled, as he hugged his sister. It's good to meet you, Nei-chan. Tayuya blinked as she saw under his hood. Her eyes widened at the golden hair and whisker scars. You're that little punk who ran off before I fought that shadow-using bastard. Kushina threateningly held up a bar of soap, and Tayuya quickly quieted down. Naruto just smiled, before going over to talk to Tsunade. Bachan, you sure there isn't anything you can do for her legs? He asked softly. She shook her head. I'm sorry, Naruto. Even if I had reached her right after she was hurt, it would have been tricky. Now it's too late. Naruto shook his head. Not for me, it isn't. I'm going to need an analysis of her injuries, and any medical books you can lend me on the subject. Tsunade blinked before sighing. All right. But you're not going to do anything without me supervising, got it? Naruto nodded. Understood. Now, can we take her home with us? Tsunade smiled at Kushina's eager face, and nodded. Just take it easy. Kushina grinned even more, as she and Naruto helped ease Tayuya into a wheelchair. Not 10 minutes later they were out the door. Kushina was pushing Tayuya, while Naruto looked over the injuries. She suffered trauma to the back that has set the lower spine out of alignment. The chakra pathways in her legs have become deformed due to a lack of chakra flowing through them, which was caused by some of the chakra points leading to her legs being damaged. Only a minuscule amount is making it through down there. So, I'll need to realign the spine without damaging any of the nerve tissue. We'll also have to slowly repair the chakra points that were damaged. Otherwise her chakra pathways in her legs will explode from the sudden rush of chakra. When they reached the Namikaze estate, Tayuya whistled. Damn, you guys knew how to live in style, she said, as they rolled inside the gate. Naruto saw Anxia lounging nearby, only for the black dragon to sit up and turn away. He tentatively reached out through their connection, only to meet a steel wall where she would have been. He looked down slightly, before turning to his mom and sister. I'll be there in a bit, he said, as he walked towards Anxia. The black dragon continued to ignore him, until he spoke. So you're just going to ignore me now? He asked softly. She didn't answer, so Naruto continued. You know, I'm not the one who called you a dumb beast or anything like that. You're the one who just threw it out there. Anxia huffed, before turning to look at him with one. You might as well have said it. Did you even think about me before you began ripping that man's mind apart? About how I would be feeling and seeing what you saw? Naruto's eyes widened, before he looked down guilty. I didn't realize, he said softly. I thought you would shut yourself off, form the bond. Anxia growled as she faced him fully. I wouldn't abandon you during something like that. I tried to share your pain and disgust, tried to help ease your burden. I saw what you saw, felt what you felt. And when your mother broke down, I tried to help. But instead of checking to see if I was okay, you yelled at me. Am I really not worthy of any concern? Naruto stepped back, as realization sunk in. His eyes watered before he looked down, his hood shadowing his eyes. You're one of the most important people in my life, Anxia. But you're right. I mistreated you, and took you for granted. I'm sorry. He turned and walked away. Anxia stood there for several moments, before lying back down. But as she did, she couldn't help but feel a small twinge of guilt. Even if Naruto had been in the wrong, she didn't like cutting herself off from him. She slowly reached out to his consciousness, only to find herself shut out of his mind. Her golden eyes widening slightly as she tried again, but still couldn't get in. She slowly receded, laying her head down as she suddenly felt very alone. That night, in Iwa, that Sasuke looked over the battle plans before him. It was for his most recent and ambitious plan, one that he felt was needed to break the stalemate of the war. With the removal of Kumo from the war, the powers of Oto and Iwa found themselves in a stalemate against Suna and Konoha. Konoha was able to concentrate almost all their forces in a defensive line that was holding the brunt of Oto and Iwa's attacks. Meanwhile, Suna was able to keep all their forces centered along one front against Iwa. That Sasuke knew that if there was to be a favorable end to this war, it would have to begin with the devastation or outright destruction of one of the flanks of the defensive line. They couldn't hit the right flank, as they would have to pass through Kumo to do it, and Kiri could suddenly show up, destroying said force. So his top military advisors had come up with the plan he was going over now. Scouts had seen that the defensive line on the left flank, near the border between the countries of fire and wind, was weak, as Konoha shinobi didn't get too close to Suna's borders, and Suna's shinobi were doing the same. If a large enough force could punch through the weakest part of the line between the two countries, they could hook around behind the defensive lines, and either obliterate Suna or Konoha's forces from behind, or simply head straight for Suna or Konoha. If they managed to force one of the two villages to surrender, they could use it as a base to attack the other. His military advisors had suggested a strike against Suna. If they defeated the weaker village, they could then use the lands of wind to strike at Konoha from the west and southwest. That would mean Konoha would have to stretch its forces to watch the north, northwest, west, and southwest. If they destroyed Konoha first, then Suna could still hold a defensive line along their north and northeast borders. The Tsuchikage had sent the plans to the commanders of his raiding bases, calling for the elite ninjas from each base to join the growing force. He had also been pulling ninjas from his front lines, while still keeping up the appearance of a strong force in front of Konoha's forces. Unfortunately, his progress in amassing his forces had been slowed considerably. 2 of his raiding outposts had been destroyed by that damned demon dragon rider, and the recent attempted break-in of his office had set the entire village on high alert. Still, he was sure he would soon be able to launch this new offensive, which would ensure victory for Iwa, and their rightful place as the most powerful of the elemental nations. Konoha, the Namake's estate. Anxia rumbled in worry, as she tried to reach Naruto through their link. The reason why was because she could sense fear and pain in him. And yet, she was still shut out of his mind. She couldn't take away the fear, couldn't shield him from it. Naruto tossed and turned in his sleep, mumbling incoherently. Sweat covered his forehead, as his face scrunched in fear. He went rigid, before he suddenly broke down into silent tears as he slept. Outside, Anxia had enough. She rumbled loudly as she pushed her nose against the window in his room, till it, and the wall around it broke inwards. Her head snaked in, immediately seeking Naruto. As soon as she saw her rider twisting in distressed slumber, Anxia nudged him, licking his face. "Please, wake up, little one. Please! Let me in!" She rumbled through their link. Naruto shot up in bed, gasping for air. He looked around the room, panting as his eyes landed on Anxia. He blinked, as he saw the destruction she had caused. "Why did you do that?" she rumbled, looking him in the eye. "You were in distress and had blocked me out. I did what I had to do to reach you. Why were you blocking me out?" Naruto looked down. "I didn't want you to be hurt by me anymore," he said softly. Anxia let out a mournful whine, as she nudged Naruto. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I didn't mean to make you feel this way. I wasn't saying I don't want to share your burdens and pains. I was hurt and angry by what happened, and I just added to your pain. Even if you were in the wrong, I shouldn't have furthered the damage. I'm sorry." Kushina came rushing in, just as Naruto hugged Anxia's snout. She blinked, looking at the damaged wall, before sighing. "You're fixing that tomorrow," she said, rubbing her eyes as she left to go back to sleep. Anxia and Naruto looked at each other, before bursting into laughter. They smiled happily, both of them glad they had reached an understanding. As Anxia retracted her head, and moved her body to block the hole, Naruto's smile disappeared as he thought back to the nightmare. In his dream, he had revealed to his friends that he was the demon dragon rider. He had been hoping to gain their friendship, but instead they had turned on him, calling him a monster for what he did to Danzō. Hinata had called him a hypocrite and a freak. And all the while, flashes of a mutilated Danzō laughing at him. Naruto shuddered as he tried to banish those thoughts from his mind. He felt Anxia's comforting warmth in his soul, and smiled, as he went back to sleep. As morning came, Naruto was already out training. He loved the early morning, feeling the cool air and dew as he ran. This particular morning, though, he did have a lot on his mind. That nightmare he had last night made him realize something. Now that the council knew his identity, maybe it was time to reveal it to his friends who he was. As he finished training, he headed back inside for breakfast. He found his mom making some already, with a tray nearby. She smiled at Naruto. "I was going to take some up to Tayuya, since she was still resting. Can I get you anything?" He shook his head. "No, I'm good. I do want to talk to you about something after you give Tayuya her breakfast." Kushina nodded as she headed upstairs. Naruto sent a few clones to fix the wall of his room, while he got some breakfast. Roughly 10 minutes later, Kushina came back down. She sat down with a cup of coffee. "So, what is it you wanted to talk about?" Naruto took a deep breath. "I'm thinking of telling the rest of my friends the truth." Kushina's eyes widened, before she sighed softly. "I see. Are you sure that's a good idea?" He leaned back. "They deserve it. They deserve to know the truth about me," he said. "Besides, what happens if they learn it from someone other than me? What would happen then?" Kushina slowly nodded. "You're right, even if I don't like it. But we should do it, so we can make sure no one leaves without promising not to spill the truth to anyone." Naruto smiled. "Okay. I'll talk to Bachan about it," he said. Just as he finished eating, there was a gong from the gate seal. Kushina quickly went to answer, while Naruto made sure to hide his face. Kushina soon returned. "You've been called to the Hokage's tower." A meeting with the top-ranked Jounin and Chunin. Naruto sighed and nodded. Best get going, he said, heading off while Kushina drank her coffee. Hokage's tower. 30 minutes later, the armored figure of Oni entered the mission room that he had been directed to by one of the ANBU. Inside was most of the elite Jounin and Chunin of Konoha, including Niji and Hinata Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, Enko Mitarashi, Ibiki Marino, Kakashi Hataki, Kurina Yuhi, Mato Gai, and Asuma Saratobi. Tsunade nodded to him, indicating a space opposite her in front of the group of shinobi. He quickly took it, while Tsunade looked over the shinobi gathered. As most of you know, the war has begun to turn in our favor. Thanks to the efforts of all our shinobi, and the demon dragon rider, we managed to force Kumo from the war with a ploy that severely weakened their defenses, leading to their withdrawal. This has also led to negotiations beginning with Kiri, which can either ensure their neutrality, or aid in the war. Tsunade turned to the map behind her, as murmurs spread through the room. Unfortunately, this has led to our enemy becoming more desperate and dangerous. We recently received intelligence on an operation by IWA that could lead to the defeat of our ally Suna. Oni will elaborate, she said, turning and nodding to Naruto. Naruto nodded, as he moved in front of that map. All right. On a recent mission to one of the farming villages near the border between Earth and Fire, I was able to pick apart the memories of an IWA kunoichi. She and a number of other shinobi from the raiding outpost were soon going to be transferred here, to a rather large fortress city about 200 miles north of their border with Wind Country. Upon further examinations of her memories, I found out why. That Sasuke plans to gather a rather large force from that city, and punch through Konoha's defensive line here, close to Fire Country's border with Wind. They shinobi began to murmur with each other as Naruto continued. Their intent is to punch a hole where the line is weakest on our side of the border. Once they've done that though, they'll swing west, and either obliterate Suna's forces from behind the defensive line they've set up. Or they'll head straight for Suna, destroying the village while a good portion of her shinobi are in the field. A Chunin stood. How do we know they won't head for Konoha? Or that this isn't a bluff? From what I've understood from a friend on the front line, IWA hasn't pulled back any of their forces. Naruto sighed. It's a brilliant strategic maneuver, if we hadn't found out. Think about it. If IWA targeted Konoha first, and succeeded, Suna would be outnumbered. But they would also only have to hold their northernmost areas. But if Suna falls, Konoha has to watch its borders along Rice Country, Earth Country, and Wind Country. Tsunade took over. I've already been talking over strategies with our military advisors. Konoha can't marshal a force large enough to stop the IWA force head-on. And guerrilla-style tactics won't work, since the enemy will want to move hard and fast. So, we've already mapped out all the routes that a large force could move fast and quickly through. We've come up with 3. She pointed them out on the map. If IWA takes any of these routes, they can cover the distance from our border with Earth to our border with Wind in only 2 days, 3 tops. I've already sent word to Suna, and they'll most likely set a trap to ambush the enemy threat. Our job is to ensure the enemy is so bloodied and exhausted by the time they get there, they won't be able to mount any resistance to Suna's trap or defenses. And we'll be doing that by laying our own traps all over these routes. I'll be assigning groups to lay traps over certain areas. Other groups will be attacking and harassing the enemy forces at key moments. For now, you're all dismissed. The ninjas slowly began to disperse. Hinata glanced at Oni for a second, before talking to Niji, who smiled at her. He glanced over at Oni and nodded, before leaving with Hinata. Naruto sighed as he turned to Tsunade. Hokage-sama, I'd like to make a request. Would it be possible for the remainder of those once known as the Konoha 12 to come to the Namikaze compound later today, or tomorrow? I would also like their senseis and the Ichiraku owners present. Tsunade blinked. Yes, it would be possible. Why though? He took a deep breath. I have something I wish to inform them about that. Her eyes widened. Oh. Right. Well, I agree, as long as me and Jiraiya are present to make sure no one speaks about it without permission. Naruto nodded. Of course. Let me know when they're available. With that, he left. As he walked down the street, he saw many people pull away. He sighed, as he knew news had leaked out of his and Kushina's execution of Danzō. Many of the populace eyed him with fear, knowing he could easily enter their minds if he wished. He simply shook his armored head, as he continued along. I just hope my old comrades don't react the same way I in another part of Fire Country that night. I'm telling you, man, this is pointless. We're never going to find Itachi. Suigetsu yelled at Jugo and Sasuke as they sat around a fire. Team Hibi were still following rumors and tips on the location of Itachi Uchiha. There had been a number of sightings within the borders of Fire Country. That was a miracle in itself, since the borders of Fire Country were heavily watched by militia and shinobi alike. Currently, they were camped outside the last town Itachi was spotted in with his companion Kisame Hashigaki. Karen had been sent in to infiltrate some of places the villagers would gather and gossip, so she could get more information. Sasuke ignored Suigetsu, while Jugo merely looked up at the sky. Suigetsu growled, and would have continued if not for a grumbling arrival. Karen stomped into camp, throwing aside the skimpy waitress outfit she had been forced to wear in one of the bars. Damn old men with grabby hands. You owe me, Sasuke-kun! Do you know what's it like to have your ass grabbed by a 50-year-old merchant and unable to drive a kunai into his manhood? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Did you get any information? He asked, ignoring Karen's yell. The way she dressed and had come onto him when he recruited her, he would think she'd like having her fanny pawed at. She nodded. Yeah, I got the information. A man matching Itachi's description apparently was seen giving something to one of the local merchants in town. Then he left, rejoining his comrade. That was 2 days ago. No one saw them after that. Sasuke nodded. We'll go and talk to this merchant then. He stood, followed by Jugo and a still grumbling Suigetsu in the town. The merchant was copying the info given to him by Itachi down, and sealing it into an envelope. He headed out after that, not sensing the 4 shadows on the rooftops. He slid the sealed envelope into a letterbox and turned to go back to his home, when he was slammed into a nearby alleyway by a rather large figure. The huge blade of a sword appeared at his neck, while his arms were pinned by the hulking youth that had smashed him into the alleyway. Behind the 2 figures pinning him, a third approached, his eyes blazing red with 3 black tomo in each eye. You know about Itachi Uchiha? The red-eyed figure said, as he stared at the man. Tell me everything you know. How often he visits, where he goes, where he comes from. Speak. The merchant struggled before spitting at Sasuke. I don't know what you're talking about, punk! Sasuke wiped the spit away, before backhanding him. I asked you some questions? Answer them, or my large friend here starts breaking your arms. When the merchant remained silent, Jugo squeezed one arm harder. The bones in the merchant man's left forearm snapped, and he screamed in pain, only to be muffled by a gag. When he stopped screaming, the gag was removed. You ready to talk? Sasuke asked again. The merchant panted out. Fuck you! He responded. Sasuke nodded, and the right forearm broke. The merchant man was really panting now, as Sasuke lifted his head. Next will be your legs. Tell me what I want to know, and we'll get you to a hospital. The merchant man was silent, until those hands gripped his left leg. Okay. Itachi stops by here, to give me information on the group he's working for. I sent that information onwards. After that, Itachi leaves. I don't know when to expect him, or where he goes. What about the info? Who does it go to? Sasuke asked. The man shook his head. I can't tell you. Believe me, I can't tell you, only that it goes to someone who reports to someone else. Sasuke slowly nodded. Alright, thanks for the info. Jugo, you know what to do. The orange-haired teen nodded, and a punch knocked the merchant man out. As he carried the man to the hospital, Sasuke went to the letter box, picked it open and pulled the letter out. He scanned the front for the address, then put it back into the box and sealed the letter box up. He turned to Suigetsu and Karen. Alright. New mission. We're going to track down whoever Itachi is passing information to. Hopefully, they can lead us to him. The 2 nodded, and all 3 disappeared. Namake's compound. Next day Naruto smiled, as he listened to Tayuya play. Shortly after coming to the Namake's estate, she had asked if they had any instruments. When she asked for a flute, Kushina had eagerly gone and bought one for you. Tayuya's face had actually lit up, as she tested it, then began playing for them. Naruto smiled, as he disappeared to his room, and pulled out a rough wooden flute. During his years with Eragon, he had taken up playing a penny whistle-style flute in his spare time. He listened to Tayuya for a bit, then joined in, playing a lower harmony. The 2 continued for several minutes, as Kushina just listened. She applauded when they finished. That was magnificent. Tayuya blushed lightly, but smiled. Yeah. I've always been good with the flute. Then, well, I was taught other ways to use it. Naruto nodded softly. Even if he was an evil lunatic, Orochimaru still knew how to make some impressive jutsu. Kushina shuddered. I just hope I don't ever run into him again. They all nodded, only to look up as the gate bell was rung. Kushina stood. I'll get it. Naruto, you take care of what you need to do, and bring Tayuya down with you. Naruto nodded, as he quickly disappeared into his room. Kushina went downstairs and out to the gate. She unlocked it and slid it open, to reveal Jiraiya and Tsunade. Both of them nodded to Kushina, who smiled and stepped back, letting them in. Tsunade smiled as she looked around. You're right, Jiraiya. Minato didn't know how to live. Jiraiya chuckled softly. Yeah, he did. He looked to Kushina. So where's the Gaki at? He's only got about 10 minutes before the others arrive. Here, Ero-senin. Came a muffled voice from the doorway. Naruto stood there in his normal black clothes and hood, with the face mask over the lower part of his face. His eyes were already red and the pupils had changed into slits. Glad you could join us. They both smiled, as Naruto came over. He shook Jiraiya's hand and hugged Tsunade, who hugged him back. She sighed softly as he pulled back. You sure you want to do this, Naruto? Naruto took a deep breath. Yes, they deserve to know, well, most of them. And it's better if they hear it from me than from someone else. Tsunade nodded. Don't worry. I'm sure after they beat the shit out of you, they'll forgive you. All of them laughed as they headed inside, where Tayuya sat in her wheelchair. She blinked at their smiling faces. What did I miss? She asked. Naruto waved one hand. Nothing, Nei-chan. Nothing. Company should be coming soon. Tayuya muttered as she straightened her shirt and pants. Her hair was in a ponytail, and she wore a hat her mom had picked up when she and Naruto had been working outside the elemental nations for 1 month. It was called a ball cap, and she had it on backwards. Naruto chuckled softly, only to stop as the bell rang again. He took a deep breath. Here we go. The first one to enter was Shikamaru, followed by Kiba and Shuji. Both Shikamaru and Kiba stopped at the sight of Tayuya, and Shikamaru pointed at her. Hokage-sama, what is Oto Kunoichi doing here? She's the one I faced off against with Temari-san from Suna. Tayuya growled. You're the shadow-using punk, you asshole, you groped my ass with that shadow strangulation jutsu. Shikamaru's sweat dropped, as Kushina glared at him. This is my daughter, Shikamaru-san. I'd appreciate it if you didn't cause a scene. Shikamaru gulped before sitting down, muttering troublesome as he did. Kiba loyalty blushed as he glanced at Tayuya, and moved away with Akamaru. About 10 minutes later, everyone was present. Shikamaru was lounging on a couch next to Chuji, who was stuffing his face with a bag of potato chips. Besides them was Kiba, who was scratching Akamaru's ears and stealing secret glances at Tayuya. Ino and Sakura were both looking around the room in wonder, while Tenten was eyeing Kushina with a slight fangirl tint to her eyes. Shino was off in a corner, examining a plant for insect specimens, while Niji and Hinata sat on another couch. Kurenai was next to them, while Asuma stood next to her. Kakashi had his book away, as he looked around, lost in memories. Lee and Guy were both jogging in place. Tuchi Ichiraku stood behind his daughter, who was sitting in a chair. Naruto took a deep breath. Thank you all for coming. As most of you know, I requested this meeting with all of you. The reason why is simple and complicated. It involves my identity. Everyone who didn't know already began to murmur and look at each other. Finally Ino spoke up. But why are you telling us? It doesn't make any sense, she said. Shikamaru was glancing around, his mind working. Why would he reveal his identity to us? The only thing we all have in common was, wait, no. It can't be. His eyes widened, and the black-clothed figure chuckled. I see Shikamaru is already guessing. And yes, Shikamaru, you're right. As Shikamaru's eyes went wide, Naruto slowly reached up to his face, gripping the mask over the lower part. What you're about to see and hear never leaves this compound. For those of you with family members on the council, you can talk to them, since they know. Slowly, he pulled the face mask down as his eyes turned to their normal blue. Everyone but Hinata gaped in silence, as Naruto's whisker marks appeared. Slowly, he lowered his hood, revealing his long spiky blonde hair. He smiled softly at them all. Hey guys. Looks like I'm home, he said, There was utter silence, then a scream of "Naruto," before a pink blurred smashed into him, hugging him tightly. Naruto gasped lightly, as Sakura cried while hugging him. That seemed to trigger something, as Ayame, Lee, Chuji, and Kiba joined in the hug. Shino stood there in emotionless silence. Tenten's mouth was open wide, as was Ino, Asuma, and Kurenai's. Kakashi's eye was wide, his body trembling, while Guy cried about how youthful this scene was. Shikamaru and Niji sat there, dumbstruck. Tucci had actually fainted. Hinata, Tsunade, Jiraiya, and Kushina all smiled, while Tayuya muttered about stupid situations. Eventually, the hugging mass surrounding Naruto managed to let go of him. Sakura was wiping away tears, smiling, while Kiba smacked his arm. "You asshole! Where the hell have you been?" Naruto took a deep breath. "It's a long story. If you'll sit back down, I'll tell you." And so he did. He told them about Eragon, and the basics of what he learned. About Anxia and how she hatched for him and bonded with him. He told them about his training, forging his sword. His voice softened when he reached Eragon's death, and Kyuubi's attempt to take him over. His voice then hardened as he spoke about his learning of Sarutobi's betrayal of him and his family. He then talked about his adventures in and around the elemental nations, before arriving at the point where Konoha hired him. When he finished, many in the room were shocked into silence. Finally, Shino surprised everyone with a single word. "Damn," he whispered. Everyone blinked and nodded. "Damn indeed," Tucci said. "You've really had an adventure, haven't you, Naruto?" Naruto slowly nodded. "I'm sorry about deceiving you all for so long. I know that I've caused you all a lot of pain. I hope that maybe you can forgive me for it." Hinata stood and approached him. Many in the room were silent, waiting to see how she would react. She simply smiled and placed a hand on his shoulder. "After all you've done? I know I can." The others began to nod. Sakura summed it all up. "As long as you don't disappear on us again. We're just glad to have you back," she said. Kiba grinned. "You know what we need to do now? We need to celebrate. The most unpredictable ninja is back, and better than ever." There was a cheer, as Naruto grinned even more. Outside, Anxia roared in happiness, as Naruto felt warmth fill him. For the first time in a long time, he truly felt like he had returned home.